Right. I think I'm going to get going. My name is James Pepper, Chair of the Cannabis Control Board. Today is Wednesday, July 29th, 2026. It's 1:01 p.m. and I call this meeting to order. We've got quite a few items on the agenda today, so I'm going to keep my remarks brief. I did want to mention that, we had some flooding throughout the state and more rain in the forecast. So we have not heard of any significant business disruptions amongst our licensees. But I do want to remind anyone that if you're experiencing extended power outages or water in your facility that's impacting, your product or public safety, please be in touch with your compliance officer. We've been through this a couple of times, unfortunately, over the years, and we do have some ability to kind of do emergency orders and waivers of certain issues. So if you're seeing that, please be in touch. Wanted to give a quick update on rescheduling. This is not meant to take the place of our rescheduling work group on August 19th, but we did just have an all states meeting with our Cannabis Regulators Association, and we just wanted to share out information as it becomes available. So the top level notes are DEA inspections are happening around the country, although not in Vermont or any of the New England states, at least as of a week ago. And there is very little consistency from state to state or region to region about how those are playing out. Some are in person, although there's some indication that they may be moving to a remote inspection, that it could involve questionnaires to a licensee, reviewing surveillance footage, reviewing your SOPs. The focus of these has largely been on security, storage, and tracking of products. And they do that to ensure compliance with their existing regulations regarding Schedule 3 products. So you can look in the Federal Register for those regulations, kind of get a sense of what they're looking for. Sometimes the DEA contacts the regulatory body ahead of time. Sometimes they reach out to the licensee directly. And sometimes they do an inspection and then request information from the regulator about the licensee. So there's no consistency really there. And then in the few states that have been visited that have merged medical and adult use retailers, the DEA inspectors have largely ignored the adult use inventory, just focused on the medical use side of things. The other just bigger update, many state regulators have reported receiving data requests from the DEA. They're focusing on kind of industry-wide licensed canopy, annual harvest, retail sales by product type, patient counts, those types of things, just kind of global picture about the market in general. So really that's about it. My general impression is that the DEA has been directed to move quickly, but is under-resourced to do so. And that cannabis, whether we're talking about medical cannabis or adult use cannabis, does not fit neatly into their regulatory framework for other Schedule 3 substances. And, it's clear that there are more questions than answers, including internally. So Julie is going to provide more substance on this on the 19th. Yep. And also kind of recap what's been happening on the broader push to reschedule cannabis at the federal level.
Now, I will just add that we are far from the only state that has some iteration of commingling adult use and medical, and even larger markets than ours are trying to figure out how to respond to these types of data requests. We are not on our own, charted mission there.
That's right. Yeah. So again, that meeting with Julie is on the 19th at 10 a.m. We did schedule a few more working group meetings, including hemp and the events pilot, both of which are on August 5th, which is next Wednesday, starting at 10 a.m. And you can see all of the links to join and the eventual agendas when they get posted on ccb.vermont.gov /working groups. This is also where we're going to post the links to sign up for these individual board member office hours. Again, the point of that is we know that sometimes people don't they're not able to kind of speak freely in an open meeting that's being recorded, and sometimes people would prefer to just meet with us one-on-one. So we're going to have links where you can just say, I want to meet with Julie for half an hour about rescheduling or products. So that'll be on that page as well. So if you have previously expressed interest in being a part of these working groups, or if you want to participate moving forward, there's no need to email us. Just all the information about how to participate will be on that working group page. Another topic, after hearing some rumblings from the field, I called over to the Division of Fire Safety and learned that earlier this year, they updated their regulations in a way that impacts new indoor grow facilities, which may include expanding an existing grow facility or changing locations of an existing grow. So essentially anything that would trigger a new or updated certificate of occupancy. I'm just going to read the regulation because, all these things are open to interpretation. It's 38.6.1.3.7. It's called area limits. And it says indoor horticulture grow structures shall not exceed an aggregate 200 square feet of floor space per fire area unless a special investigation approved by the authority having jurisdiction has demonstrated adequate fire safety. So given that this fire code is out of our jurisdiction, I don't want to speculate as to how this is going to play out on the ground. I'm flagging this for all indoor growers that may have plans to change locations, expand, or otherwise trigger the need for an updated certificate of occupancy. Department of Fire Safety's advice was that you reach out to your local fire marshal early to talk about your plans, and keep in mind that 200 square foot cap is presumptive. It can be raised by agreement with the local fire marshal. But the analysis that they're going to use is going to be focused on a site-specific evaluation and may involve the use of, creating an additional exit or additional fire alarm system, sprinklers, separation of fire areas. So it's not just a statewide template. On a personal note, I'm extremely disappointed that this change slipped by us. We have 140 indoor cultivators and we have 80 mixed tier cultivators. We have never had a fire safety issue at any one of them. So this change feels like one of those unnecessary regulations that attempts to solve a problem that doesn't exist. There is some flexibility, as I mentioned, built into this new regulation. So I'm going to be working with fire safety to see if we can find some common ground about a standard that can be applied consistently across the state. Any other comments?
I'm also disappointed. I mean, I think we know that the NFPA developed this in 2021, 2022, and we were pretty actively developing our rules, and this never came up, and that would have been really helpful at the time.
Speaking as regulators, I think it's hard for us to understand and juggle every single proposed rule coming out of every single agency and determining how cannabis is impacted by it. It's just a lot to keep in the air. I'm a little disappointed that fire safety did no intentional outreach to any of us beforehand, but we can have that conversation with fire safety when the time is appropriate.
Yeah. All right. We got to approve our minutes from our regular board meeting, which was on June 24th, and our special meeting on July 15th. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Now moving to public comment. Handle it the same way you always do. If you join by the link, raise your virtual hand. We'll move to people that join by a phone, but we actually have a visitor in the room. Do you want to make a public comment?
Sure.
All right.
Do I just do it right here?
You can do it from right there. It's fine, unless you want to be on camera, but no.
Yeah,
Okay.
so,
If you could just state your name though.
yeah, I have it written down because I'm not very good at this, and
Okay.
my computer, it's important to me. So I'm Chris Lilly. I'm a tier 2 sun-grown cultivator in Stockbridge. I'm a founding member of the Crop Producers Joint and vice chair of the VGA Cultivator Working Group. I want to start by saying that speaking in public is not something real. I'm here today because this issue is too important to my community, to the people I work alongside, and to the small cultivators who are trying to survive in this market. Vermont built its cannabis framework on values we all share: equity, small business support, and community scale agriculture. Those values are why I chose to build my farm here. They're why so many of us entered this market with hope. But the reality on the ground is different. The system is not functioning as intended. For many small cultivators and independent operators, it isn't just challenging, it's becoming unsustainable. I've watched people I care about struggle, and I felt that pressure myself. One of the core issues is the bottleneck at retail. We have more licensed producers than current retail structure can realistically support. And that imbalance puts immense pressure on small farms. Product sits, prices drop below viable levels, small operators are being squeezed out of the market they helped build. At the same time, many retail license holders are vertically integrated, and in practice, that offers limited shelf access for independent farms. We're also seeing informal shelf trading dynamics where access to retail space is uneven and not always transparent. This concentrates opportunity and makes it even harder for small standalone cultivators to compete. I'm asking you to address this directly by opening up additional retail opportunities and rethinking how retail licenses are structured. A tiered or scaled retail system could prioritize access for smaller operators, cooperatives, and locally rooted businesses, ensuring that shelf space reflects the diversity of Vermont producers. Vermont is known for its cottage industry, its small farms, and its commitment to keeping commercial, local, and human scale. Our cannabis market should reflect those same values. If we want this system to succeed long-term, we need to make adjustments now before more small operators are forced out. And expanding and restructuring retail isn't just an economic fix. It's a necessary step to realign the program with the values it was built on. I also urge the Cannabis Control Board to review the rule that limits social equity status to initial market access only. This restriction prevents qualified individuals and family members impacted by the past cannabis enforcement from being recognized later in the licensing process. Revisiting this rule would ensure the Vermont social equity framework remains inclusive and responsive to all those still seeking another license in the regulated market. Thank you all.
Thank you. All right. I'm just going to go in the order that I can see here, and I'll start with Dave Silverman.
Hello. A lot on your agenda today. I would hope that you don't take major actions without providing additional opportunities for public comment on the things you discuss. I do want to provide some comment on one of the items in your agenda today, the ID scanning piece. Look, ID scanning, it's an industry best practice, and it's something that you should support, not limit. It is, it's a powerful tool for screening out underage customers with fake IDs. It's commonly used not only in cannabis dispensaries nationwide, but in other age-sensitive sectors like bars and nightclubs. As a screening tool, it's especially important for dispensaries in areas with disproportionately high rates of underage residents rather, not just college towns like Middlebury and Burlington, but also dispensaries in ski areas that draw a lot of young visitors from nearby states. Look, we scan IDs. We've scanned IDs since the market opened. Underage college students in Middlebury, they know from experience, they know from word of mouth that we scan IDs and that they're not going to get past us. That knowledge deters them from even trying, and that's the way it should be. The ones who do try, we turn away. Again, that's the way it should be. Look, it's just harder to fool both the set of eyeballs and the scanner than it is to fool just the eyeballs. You've discussed ID scanning previously, and at that time, we worked with your compliance department to ensure that our practices respect consumer choice and privacy and comply with your requirements. What we did was place a clear and conspicuous signage right where the customers come in and their IDs are checked, explaining that we scan the IDs and why we do it, and explaining how customers can choose to shop anonymously if that's what they desire. And that choice is frictionless for the customer to make, and yet very, very few customers make that choice. On the other hand, the vast majority of our customers and other dispensaries customers want to participate in dispensaries loyalty programs, to receive, profile triggered benefits like, veterans discount that might be applied on a group setting, and be able to, frankly, just find out what it is that they bought last time that they liked so much and forgot exactly what it was. And further, for medically endorsed dispensaries, your rules actually require us to associate purchases with individual customer profiles. Now, as you probably know, Vermont recently enacted a data privacy law, and that law goes into effect January of 28. Enforcement of that law is not in your purview. It is with the Attorney General's office. To the extent that you're concerned that you're going to discuss today is with helping licensees comply with that law once it goes into effect in 17 months, I urge you to take that helpful approach and work with the AG's office and your licensed business community to develop a set of best practices that can prepare us all for compliance in 28. I think that sort of approach would be welcome. On the other hand, to the extent that you're seeking to impose a different set of standards on cannabis retailers than is applicable to any other retailer in the state, I urge you to take a step back and enunciate a clear justification for why and how you think the legislature granted you authority that no other state agency has. From my perspective, that didn't happen. So I thank you for your time and careful consideration.
Thanks, Dave. Tito?
Yeah, sorry about that. Just as you were explaining the new rule from the fire marshal, my reception cut out. Where can we find that again?
Yeah, it's I'll give you the citation so you can look at it directly.
Thank you.
It's a long string of numbers, so just
Ready.
make sure you write it down. It's 38.6.1.3.7. And it's the, what is it? The
NFPA.
NFPA 1, Chapter 38.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yep. Peter from Little Dipper Cannabis.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect, thank you. So thank you for taking the time to listen to our comments. I'd like to specifically address the updated guidance on product labeling that was approved in last month's meeting. The change to mandatory 10-point font for the health information warning specifically. I think it would be harmful both to my businesses and realistically, I think most businesses that label products. And quite frankly, I'll be honest, I was kind of disappointed. You guys sort of seem to downplay this a lot in the meeting. Basically said nothing has really changed and quote that it shouldn't change anything of substance for anybody, end quote. And I may have missed it, but I also didn't see any update on that noted in the weekly update emails the CCB typically sends out on Mondays. So to check if this truly doesn't change anything of substance, I measured a few flower and pre-roll containers with some calipers, and it seems almost the standard most people are using is 6-point font. There's some variation obviously, but that was kind of seemed like a pretty common size. I also checked what some of our neighboring states were doing as well on this regard and noticed that our requirements really aren't in line with theirs. So for starters, our health information warning is 821 characters long, not including the 29 characters for the child access warning. Compared to New York's, which is at 353 max, possibly less as it can rotate, or Massachusetts, which is 527 characters, and Maine is a little under 300, 291. So to put that into context, basically, New York is 57% shorter, Mass is 36% shorter, and Maine is 65% shorter. And then to kind of compare font size, New York and Maine both dictate a minimum font size of 6, while Mass has a minimum of 8-point font for warnings. So to add some context there, 10-point font is 177% more area than 6-point font. So it's literally almost triple the size. as far as the space that would take up. I'd like to stress, I guess, that our required warning is significantly longer than our comparable markets and now requires a significantly larger font size as well. I am sympathetic if legibility is an issue of the current warning, but I think that if you're going to change the font size minimum, that you should also update the length so that, because basically right now you're requiring so large a font size that a lot of our packaging would actually become obsolete and small size appropriate packaging would no longer be able to be used. So I'd ask that you actually look at the packaging sizes that many of these products are sold in and ask yourselves how many of those packages would become obsolete. If the required warning is taking up, a large percentage of the average label, I guess, don't you think that would be an issue? So to kind of give a little up context on how it would impact me, my pre-roll label is 2 by 3.5 or 7 square inches. I can't even fit all the required information on the label anymore. The health information warning, along with the child warning access, take up 95% of the label alone, even with slightly reduced line spacing and character spacing. So there's not even room for me to put the process lot, cultivator, strain name, license number, much less my logo on the packaging. And then similarly for my 4-ounce jars for flour, it would take up 63%, so essentially 2/3 of my label just for the health information warning. And then similarly, my 3-ounce jars basically become obsolete. So I just wanted to kind of bring this up. Sorry, I'm getting some feedback. I've been Wow, this feedback's really annoying. I guess basically to sum it up, a lot of us, we're trying to run businesses in an ever-evolving regulatory landscape, and quick changes in regulation with enforcement a month out to me is just insane. When Maine changed their warning label in 2024, they provided a year for companies to adjust, whereas here it simply was to delay enforcement for a month. So I guess it would be really nice if you give a little more consideration to the timeline and our budgets when you create new guidance so that we have an appropriate amount of time to adjust, work through our inventories, and budget accordingly. To me, 1 month is just not an appropriate amount of time, regardless of whether statute allows it. Thank you for your time. I appreciate your consideration. That's it.
Thank you, Peter. Next, I see Tyler Watkins.
Yes, I'm a community member that's a medical patient and have been for about 8 years. And I just want to bring up a couple quick general things. First off, I'd like to thank any veterans that are in attendance. And I'd also like to read a quick email because I'm sure multiple medical patients run into the situation I did. I just got my enhanced license renewed on my birthday. I still have my driver's license that just expired and my temp license given by DMV. I was unable to purchase anything even at the medical places due to no temporary licenses accepted at all, even for medical. We're talking a couple of weeks of no access due to licenses being shipped from secure facilities in Washington State. I find it hard to believe that someone can pick up a C2 medication such as fentanyl at the pharmacy, but not at a state licensed medical dispensary. Keeping in mind that the state accepts it for other controlled substances, let's see, where was I? And they also accept it for the log that the state keeps for things like Sudafed. I know that the law says that you have to have both your driver's license and medical ID at check-in, but if you're an established medical patient, I think that should be changed because I followed all the rules and it's as if I had no access for 2 weeks. And I mention it because I had to learn how to rewalk. Okay. And so it does make a difference. So couple quick small things. If possible, possibly make it where customers can buy direct from state and manufacturers of medical products. I would encourage medical studies between small dispensaries and growers. And God forbid one becomes insolvent. I believe you have a policy on that. I believe that if the product is still good, that the state should, instead of destroying it, evenly distribute it to those medical dispensaries that want to participate, so that people who have lower income are still able to access this medication. Also, the last thing I want to bring up, so I don't take up too much time, is that I have a near photographic memory, unfortunately. And I do want to mention something I remembered from 8 years ago. And that was how nice Courtney Gabario was before she tragically died. She used to work for your department, I believe, when it was in Waterbury. And I got the honor of talking to her twice. And I never forget someone who helps me with my conditions. And so I just wanted to take the time, given that July is the month that she was murdered. I also wanted to point out that there is an organization that came out of that called Courtney's Allies. They do have a Facebook page, I believe, so check it out. And I was hoping, still new to this thing, are you guys able to turn on my video by any chance? The option?
We don't typically do that for these, just because there's lots of ways that can go bad.
And
I'm
with so many people on,
I'm holding
it
up
makes
a
it so that it
picture
doesn't
of Courtney.
Oh,
I'm holding
that's so
up a
nice.
picture of Courtney, so that people understand that kind people that do the small things really do make a difference in people's lives.
Yeah.
So
She was incredible.
If I'm not able to show it on the camera, I would ask that the board include a picture of her in your minutes. And her organization that helps to deter domestic violence, which has no place in this state or anywhere else. Thank you.
Thanks, Tyler. Jeffrey?
Thanks, Chair. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I guess first I just want to say thank you, Tyler, for sharing that in this public space, and condolences to everyone who knew that individual. Well, I guess just a couple things. I'll be brief. For the record, Jeffrey Pizzatolo, Vermont Growers Association. I want to lift up Chris Lilly's remarks during this public comment period. Everything that she said really stands true. And I know, board, that you all are aware of the charge from the enabling statute to focus all of your policy decisions around small cultivators, which by extension also means their customer base as well. We're looking at 4 or 5 cultivators that exited the market as reported by the executive director last board meeting. The state is hemorrhaging its talent on a monthly basis. And I just want to remind everybody, especially the commissioners, that as these talented cultivators exit the market, the dynamic that we see play out is what has been playing out in every single adult use state, such that emboldens the illicit market. And it really is incumbent on all of us to ensure that these individuals stay in the market, not just so we can capture their tax dollars, but also in the interest of public health and public safety. So as commissioners, please, as you forge ahead with these working groups, whether it is the event pilot, the retail siting, product equivalency, and even federal rescheduling, that you do center, and I know that you guys have started this, but that you do center the interests of small producers. And this is not at the expense of others, but this is a charge of you all. Lastly, I do want to sort of just echo something specifically that Chris Lilly also mentioned. That is around one of your rules, with the understanding that you all are likely going to embark on some abbreviated rules processes later this year around some of these statutory initiatives that landed in your lap, whether it's hemp or event pilot. And we do ask that it is, and we believe that is appropriate to reassess 1.13.4. So this is the social equity designation in your Rule 1. Item C does state, and I know that you all are familiar with this, but I'll just read it briefly. The board retains discretion to administer fee waivers and support in conformity with a purpose to facilitate initial market access for persons actually disadvantaged by historically inequitable enforcement of cannabis prohibition. I read that because I do believe that the phrase that is for the purpose to facilitate initial market access is too limited. And it is too narrow from which the statute arrived at back in 2021 when this first came about. So I ask that you do revisit that to bring it more in alignment with individuals who are not just interested in joining the market, but those who are also existing in the market as well. They need ongoing support. And I'll leave it there and have a good meeting.
Pepper, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Sometimes when we get the feedback that was talked about, it's because of our microphone issue. Shannon from Green River.
Hi. I wish I was a little more organized coming into this, but I've been encouraged to share because my husband Tyler and I, we were one of the very first cultivators to get in the very beginning. We have a cultivation license, a manufacturing license, and then got one of the last retail licenses. And now we're in the process of shutting down some of our licenses and getting out. And I would never encourage anyone, honestly, to get into the cannabis industry. It's caused so much turmoil and stress and anxiety with the constant changes, constant breakdowns in how things work, reporting systems, what's expected of us. It's impossible to survive as a small cultivator, manufacturer. The market's over flooded. We all had to drop our prices and we're stuck there. No one's making any money. And our last ditch effort to salvage anything that we have put in the last 4 years, which included our life savings, was to try to salvage our retail license, which we found a partner to come on as a principal, invest in our company and our business, and did a lot of market research, found a potential location that would create more business and offered to run it and manage it. And so we came to the CCB, asked what it was that we needed to do, had a meeting with you. You told us what we needed to do, which included securing the new location, signing a lease. And then at the May 27th, we submitted all of this by May 15th. Before this meeting happened on May 27th. May 27th, you ripped the rug out from under us and said that you were not going to process any more relocations after we had already done everything that you had asked us to do. Now we've been paying $4,000 a month for a space that we haven't been able to be in since May, on top of all the other extreme fees that we have to take on in this industry. And now we're still pleading with you to allow this move to happen. It's our last this is the last thing that we can do is to move our store. We can't advertise. How are we going to get people to the location where we're at if we can't advertise? We're in a sales business, but we can't entice a sale. So the frustration had just come to a head and we backed out. We've closed down our grow. That ends in September. We've already shut down our kitchen, our manufacturing. We were so proud of our products, of our brand. But it's not feasible to continue in this industry, in this market. And yeah, I agree with everything everyone has been saying. And I hear a lot of the same frustration from them. And I wish them all the best of luck, but I really encourage you as the board to set up a committee, get more actual feedback, have a representative from each license type to give you some feedback before you make decisions that affect people's livelihoods. Every time you make a decision, it costs us money, like with labeling, packaging, and your standards, and there's no consistency ever. Like I have registered products that have gone through just fine one year, and then the next year I'm told I need to do 6 different things, or that I can't use this packaging anymore, or that I'm missing something on a label after we've spent thousands of dollars on this stuff. The way that you define things is not clear, and it causes a lot of headache and costs a lot of money. And I encourage you to speak with your compliance officers. They're the ones who are face to face with us. They're the ones hearing our concerns and working with us. So I would really encourage you to listen to their feedback, get out into the field, talk to some people who actually hold licenses and what they do. Because for us, it feels like you just sit behind a desk, push papers, talk all this mumbo jumbo, but don't actually know what is actually functioning in the industry at our level. So that's my piece. I'm still pleading with you to please allow our move so that we can hold on to something after the last 4 years that we've put into this industry. But yeah, I can't do anymore. I've got to step back because it's affected my health, it's affected my well-being, and it's affected my family. So we had to make the call to back out.
Thanks, Shannon. Andy, down to the roots.
On. Your video isn't working. That's fine. Oh, sorry. I apologize. Can you hear me? Having technical
Yes.
difficulties. Okay, sorry. Thank you. Thank you, Andy Goldman, co-owner of Down to the Roots Dispensary and Gardens Gold manufacturer. Thank you for the opportunity to address the board and those attending this meeting. And thank you for the new board members' access hours, all very much appreciated. For my comments, first, we echo Tyler's statements about medical needs for IDs and product for medical patients. As for the IDs, the result that he has mentioned is just unacceptable for medical patients. We hope it's unacceptable to the CCB. They need cannabis for their health and wellness. Second, we concur with Dave Silverman's comments about scanning IDs. It's the best practice that's exercised over 24 adult use states and all other medical states. And we agree it's the best way to prevent underage entry to dispensaries in accordance with the law, and it should be continued. Third, since unfortunately it still hasn't been addressed by the CCB, we please need to keep repeating this. We're still saddled with paying our renewal fees at the time of applications. For retailers, that's $10,000. And we're doing it at the time of application instead of renewal. The difference between the time of our license is expiring, when we should be paying the renewal fee, and when we finally initially submit, which is the only time time when we can pay by credit card, which at least gives us much time, or when we're mandated to have our renewal applications completed versus when we should be having it paid can be months. And this is something that the CCB decided to do, while well intended, because we've been told that there were people paying late and their licenses expired, but the rest of us who are complying are being punished for it. So this is an example of our regulator actually foisting extra economic burdens on all of its licensees. And we're asking, this is, I think, the fourth time I'm doing this in public, maybe the third, that this be remedied for all of us immediately. Fourth, we've been experienced that emails to the CCB's compliance email, they don't get answered by the CCB compliance department unless we ask multiple times over the span of weeks or months, and even then they may not be answered. We recently had to add the CCB's executive director to get a response. And of course, we got a response, but we respectfully ask that this be addressed. It's an extremely important regulator function. Finally, regarding the recent retail siting workshop, thank you for that opportunity. Unfortunately, it devolved in significant missed opportunities for productive conversation and unprofessionalism, which we sincerely hope gets avoided and better managed in the future. In regards to productivity, this was a retail siting workshop. Instead, we spent valuable time on items that are either not relevant or simply not correct factually. For example, so much time was spent on growers repeatedly voicing that they want direct sales to customers when, as I'm sure, Chair Pepper, you can attest, factually and legally, the CCB is not authorized to grant such. So why do we keep spending so much time in a retail siting meeting discussing such? Further, we should be looking for solutions that benefit everyone, and certainly not solutions that would clearly benefit one licensed vertical at the clear harm for another. Last, for growers wanting to sell directly to customers, when the CCB formulates appropriate and approved geographic siting rules and the moratorium is lifted, then every single grower who doesn't currently have a dispensary will have that very same opportunity to get a dispensary license just like everyone else. Related, it's unfortunately becoming a concern from the structure and participation in these meetings and some public statements that the CCB has a seeming bias for growers when a regulator has a duty to be fair and equitable in its dealing with licensees. So we therefore respectfully ask that the CCB kind of reflect on this and adjust accordingly if you agree when you look at statements made. Another example of lack of productivity and factually incorrectness. We keep hearing that we should be treated as a free market when that is so far from the truth. We are anything but a free market. A free market is dictated solely by price, supply, and demand without government, without excess regulatory controls and rules. The very existence of the CCB, the fact that we need to be licensed, rules 1 through 4, all indicate, and the fact that we can all just have one location, very unlike an automobile dealership, which can have an infinite amount across Vermont or any states, and therefore, as economies of scale, just belies that we are a free market. Last, we sympathize with small growers who, like retailers, again lack the opportunity for economies of scale. We are very supportive of all growers. We've invested a great deal of money into Canatrol systems inside our vault and in our bulk bar so that all of your products can be fresh for the customers, no matter how long it's in our vault, so that it also preserves your reputation. We're also very supportive of small growers in that out of 13 growers that we recently had as our lineup, 46% of them were tier 1 and 69% were total tier 1 and 2. We give every farm and every manufacturer opportunity to meet our customers. Some have done it several times. So we're very supportive of growers. We also try to rotate. And if it's quality cannabis at fair prices, come talk to us. We also have to share values though, that, we're looking to advance the industry and not just one group versus another. Finally, most relevant to growers and CCB board members who want many more dispensaries in Vermont, including regardless of market need as mandated by state statute. We have to say, and I'm sorry to put it this way, but be careful for what you wish for. And what I mean by that is I'm asking everyone to do their homework and research as to what happens when there are too many dispensaries or too many growers. The answer is the evidence is overwhelming that the result is massive price compression and that the worst impact is on the smallest growers, in our case, tier ones, because of lack of economies of scale. You just have to look at actual experiences of other mature states. I'll give you 3 to research: Massachusetts, Colorado, and Oregon. And after this meeting, I'll share a few independent sources as backup to this. They're showing massive price compression and hurt for all industry participants, but the worst occurs on small growers. I mean, as more evidence, as recently as June of this year, Massachusetts froze all new grower licenses, which I believe was asked for by the growers. It's subject to confirmation, whereas I believe we only have a freeze on tier 2 and higher. In conclusion, let's please continue with productive and professional conversations at our meetings that move the whole industry forward. And let's help us reopen a balanced and appropriately geographically distributed retail system, which includes underserved and unserved areas, but avoids excessive price compression due to too many dispensary licenses or too many grow licenses. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Ben Wilcox.
Hello. Hey, this is Ben Wilcox from Off Piste Farm. I'm a tier 1 outdoor cultivator. And I just wanted to start by saying I feel grateful to have a license and have the opportunity to grow and sell cannabis legally in the state of Vermont. I really enjoy what I do, and I feel privileged to be that I was in a position to be able to enter the market in the first year. And I think everybody who has a license is privileged. And I would like to see that opportunity exist for future people who don't have a license yet. And one thing that has been on my mind a lot lately is I'm just concerned that that opportunity doesn't exist really right now. And I think that's would be the biggest failure of the market, is if no new licenses were able to succeed. And I was I don't always get the chance to tune in live here, and I had to listen to a lot of your recordings, and I was listening to some of the stuff you guys were discussing previously about how to allow producers to scale up in size and the stepping stone theory and stuff. And I just want to bring up that there needs to also be a stepping stone for a unlicensed individual to get a tier 1 license and be able to enter the market. We're all, no matter what license type you have, we're all in the business of selling plants, producing plants, selling plants. It all starts with seeds. And I feel like a new tier 1 grower is like the seed. The analogy would be they're like a seed for the industry. We need new people to come in, and we can't just allow the market to be stagnant and consolidate into large tiered growers. And I've heard some of the comments about how like allowing a small producer to sell to consumers directly would be detrimental to the market. And I have a really hard time as a small producer seeing how and why that would be the case. As a tier 1 outdoor grower, I've done the math on it, and the data might be a couple months old, but I'm allowed to produce 0.24% of the total licensed outdoor canopy if I include all of the outdoor and mixed licenses. So my crop is potentially up to 0.24% of the total, and I just go from sale to sale. It's not like I'm getting rich. I don't really care to take over the world. I don't want to be any bigger than a tier 1. Honestly, I'm happy at that scale. But over the last several months, I also wanted to bring up some real world examples of times when I've had to turn down revenue and turn away customers due to the current regulations. And I know this isn't something you can necessarily change. I just wanted to bring it to your attention because if I didn't say so, then how would you ever know? And the first example is at NECAN when I had a booth there. And I was grateful to be able to bring some products this year, and go through the regulatory channels to get my products, my advertising approved and bring some samples for display. And I brought a sample clone for display. And I had a lot of people, home growers, come up to me and ask to want to buy clones. And I told them, yeah, I'm doing a clone sale next weekend in St. Johnsbury. Come on out and sell you some clones. And they're like, oh, you don't have any for sale here? And I was like, no, I can't sell you any here. And people were pretty shocked about that. And then, because across the aisle from me was somebody from Massachusetts who is unlicensed, unregulated, and they were selling clones left and right. I mean, they must have sold hundreds of clones. So every person who came up to me and asked me as a Vermont licensed business and member of the community to buy one of my clones, I said, well, you can either come drive to St. J next weekend to get one, or you can buy one from those guys right there. And they would just, every single person walked across and bought one from them. So I had to stand there as a Vermont producer, and watch customers buying from an unlicensed, out-of-state producer instead. So that was a tough pill to swallow. Another one is when I did do my clone sale, we sold out of everything within very quickly. And there was way more people that showed up than I had clones for. And I had a bunch more clones back at my place that weren't quite ready yet. They were like a couple weeks out. And several people were like, can we just come to the farm and buy clones? And I was like, no, I can't sell you clones, but I'll try to line up another clone sale here when the ones are ready. And that the store just he didn't really, it's a lot of work. He's not a nursery. He's not in the business of keeping plants alive, and he just didn't want to do another clone sale. So I had, and then people continued to email me. People were emailing me about clones. They're like, can we come buy clones? And I was like, I can't sell you clones. I'll try to get them to a retailer. Where's your retailer? I'm trying to coordinate this delivery of these small products. I mean, we're talking like $30 at a time here, but it's really difficult to coordinate the sale of a living plant when people just want to come here and buy them, and I can't sell them to them, and trying to sell them to clones. And I think, overall, I lost out on a few $1,000s in revenue from clone sales this spring. And that's, it's a really tough as a small business to turn that down. And I think people would rather buy clones from a grower than from, anyways, I can't. So that's just an example. And then another example is just when people reach out wanting certain strains that I have that nobody else grows. Pudding Hill cheese would be one that is probably my most requested. And they're like, it's not for sale anywhere near me. Can we buy some from you? We want to get an ounce of it or whatever. And I'm like, I can't sell it to you. You got to go into your local store and ask them to order it. And it almost never happens, so it's hampering my business and also as far as I just wanted to point out too that the products that the clones that I produce and the flour that I produce is stuff that I make here, that I grow here. I mean, the seeds I make here, I make all of this stuff that didn't exist ever before in the world, and I turn it into a product. And that's a lot different than buying something that already exists as a product and then just reselling it. I put a lot of my blood, sweat, and tears into the stuff that I make here. And I don't want to sell. I don't want to be a retailer. I have no interest in retailing. I love wholesaling in cannabis. That's what I did back in the day forever. I wholesaled only, and I still wholesale, and I only want to really wholesale, but these small little sales. Oh, another example too was these people that come camp here, these guys, they came up and they're camping here and they wanted to buy weed from me. And I was like, I can't sell you any weed. So they brought their own weed with them from home. They came up from New Jersey and just brought their own. So they're here at my place where I grow weed as a licensed producer, and they're smoking weed from out of state here. And it's just that was a tough one too, and all these little things I don't, like I said, like I don't want to have to pay $10,000 to be able to make a couple $1,000s in sales. I mean, that doesn't make sense either. I think there needs to be some sort of a differentiation between somebody who's creating their own products and just trying to, you know, get by and make sales than versus somebody that on Main Street in a town that, you know, has a cornucopia of products from all over the state and a huge selection and beverages and edibles and all these things. Like that's not stuff that I have here, and not ever going to have it here. So those are just some thoughts to consider, I think. And yeah, I don't see allowing small producers to be able to sell their stuff as detrimental to the market. I think it's paramount to the survival of the market because we need people to be able to enter and be viable and make sales. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Kyle, has anyone joined via phone?
Doesn't look like it.
Okay. We had one more person join us in person in the room. Graham, do you have any comments you'd like to make?
I can make a brief comment. Okay. Should I move up to the table? Or are you good here?
You're fine there unless you want to be on camera.
No, cool. Graham Struffenacht. I'm the policy director at an organization called Rural Vermont. It's really great to hear all the comments you all brought today. I really appreciate hearing you all. We're a 40-year-old agricultural organization and work on the issue of cannabis and long-term. I've worked on hemp, currently work with Vermont Cannabis Equity Coalition, with Vermont Growers Association, NOFA Vermont, Vermont Racial Equity Coalition, with Vermont Patients Alliance. I might be forgetting somebody else. I've been on leave for a little bit. And I'm also a farmer and had some calves this morning, so sorry to be a little late, a little out of season. I just wanted to really address some of the concerns and questions around direct market access, because as an organization that's worked in agriculture for 40 years and probably one of the most diverse and successful states for small agriculture, we've learned a lot. And direct markets are critical, if not essential, for small producers. We are not asking for a free market. I don't think my organization would ever support the notion of free markets. Principally, we're asking for fair markets. I think the last two meetings have had very important comments from folks like Myra, Sarah, Farnsworth, and others that really explain some of the intricacies of this. And someone mentioned, why don't y'all get retail licenses essentially when the retail license windows? And I just want to clarify that producers aren't asking for retail licenses. They don't want to sell other people's products. They want to make and sell their own products directly to consumers like every other producer and every other form of agriculture that we have a regulated market for. This is inherently different. It's a different risk. It's a different investment. There's different ways these are regulated across markets. A farm stand, CSA delivery, farmers markets, none have the same requirements as a large retail grocery store. They don't compete with them. And rather they complement them and make more opportunities for them. And that's what I think retailers, those who are dissenting voices right now, would be really helpful if you look into the research for. Call NOFA Vermont, call Rural Vermont. Let's look at the research of how small producer direct markets have benefited retailers over time. Over many decades, we have tons of data. Most small farmers have direct and wholesale markets they access. There's an existing, and I think beyond, there is an existing equity in this market that doesn't exist in others, which is directly at odds with the intent of the legislation as written, which Myra and others brought up really well in the language. And as I said, from ag, we know that small farmers need direct markets. It's not a question of whether they can have them, they need them to survive and thrive. It was also brought up that the CCB cannot create direct markets. And absolutely, I don't think the intention of these comments is asking the CCB to create legislation. We know they can't do that. But what we are asking is that they advocate for them, that they reflect to policymakers the conditions on the ground they are hearing about from those they are responsible for regulating responsibly, that they make this a priority issue, that they back up producers and speak to this and support these efforts of a fair market that supports all licensees when they have the opportunity, and don't speak against us when we come to those tables with legislators to make this point. And that's just some of the clarifications I wanted to add, dig a little to that, and encourage, again, retailers who feel otherwise. There's exceptional amount of evidence. This can only benefit everybody. And the issue isn't us here advocating just for growers. We are advocating for all licensees when we advocate for this, because there is currently a competitive advantage that only certain participants in the marketplace have that competitively disadvantages others. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thanks, Graham. So historically, we haven't had multiple comments. It's just one comment per person during these public comment windows, because what we had seen happen historically is people start talking to each other, and not, help to us. But, and I know we have a lot to get through and you've got a hard stop, but, Tyler, you were able to just keep it brief?
Yes, I do really appreciate that. I just wanted to say something in case I didn't mention it before. I would ask that the board add a medical patient advocate to the board. I think that would be a good go-between between the board and the growers and the dispensaries. And also to the small businesses out there and growers, I just want to say thank you from my family to yours. I really appreciate that. You've helped me to become a member of the community that's active. And I just want to say thank you.
Thanks, Tyler. And Shannon, just same kind of caveat that we need to get to the agenda, and we historically haven't allowed multiple comments, but if you could maybe just keep it brief.
Yeah, sorry. I just had a quick public service announcement that I feel maybe some people aren't aware of because we weren't aware until recently, that if you have Vermont Federal Credit Union as your bank and you hold multiple licenses, your fees are capped at $1,000 a month. We found that we were overpaying by $115 a month for almost 2 years. They did remedy it with us, but it's just something that you might want to look into, is to make sure that your bank fees are appropriate for the amount of licenses that you have, because it wasn't caught by the bank. We caught it just recently. That's it.
Thank you, Shannon. Okay, I'm going to close the public comment window. Thank you for those comments. We do take all of these issues to heart. We've been, working with this community and this industry as partners for a long 5 years, 6 years, and we really do appreciate you guys helping keeping us informed about what is happening on the ground. And, we do site visits and try and get out into the world and do working groups to try and help develop policy and implement policy effectively. But we can't do it without you, the people most impacted. I'm looking down the agenda. We have, I think, 3 or 4, 5, 7, 8 distinct conversations, agenda items. Gabe, I think the most efficient thing would be for you to just queue them up for us, queue up the discussion and the decision point that you need.
Thank you. And yeah, with it in mind that we're running low on time, I'll try to be quick. The first agenda item that you're asked to look at are options for deterring late renewal applications, kind of a follow-on to discussions that you had about a 3 strikes rule or something like this. The heart of this issue is Rule 1.15.1. This is the rule that requires that renewal application be filed 30 days prior to expiration. Big campaign over the last probably 2 years to encourage folks to go faster with that. Mostly successful. People have been great. You as a board were just rolling over what to do with persistent late filings. You had talked about invoking your authority under Rule 1.15.2b to reject those filings if it were the third or subsequent time. After talking with enforcement staff and folks here, we recommend you basically abandon the 3 strikes policy and instead consider treating these as minor violations, as Category 5 violations. If the virtue of that is that almost every time we have wound up in a position where the board is looking at a late application that's maybe the second or third time and trying to understand the context, it has lacked the tools to have that conversation with somebody to learn how reasonable was what happened. Just because I screwed up the last 2 times doesn't mean, my relative didn't really have a heart attack this time. You know what I mean? And so is more fair and more procedurally efficient and orderly to treat those as minor violations, refer them to enforcement, and let enforcement make the direct inquiries with people so they can understand the circumstances. Your rule has a really clear list of mitigating and aggravating factors. It's just a better way, more efficient. It's more context specific. It can be more fair. That's all. So, not the decision of the century, but we think on the whole that treating these as category 5 violations, ministerial violations, basically, is a better way to go. And then once you refer them, compliance could apply the same principles it does to every referral. And that could result in anything from no action to a warning letter to a fine of some kind. Right.
Questions for Gabe on that?
No, it's a great idea.
All right.
Dig it.
I think we need a motion for that. Do you have one?
I move that the board rescind this 3 strikes policy for acceptance of late renewals under Rule 1.5.2B. And with that in mind, that the board may reject any application that is late without good cause, that the board instead adopt a policy of referring repeated late renewal violations to the compliance division, entrusting the division to assess particulars and decide what, if any, further action is appropriate, which may mean anything from no action to a warning letter to assessment of a category 5 violation.
No, second. Any discussion? All I would say is, I don't like a rule like our 3 strikes policy that doesn't take into account aggravating, mitigating circumstances. And I think this is a much more efficient way to take those into account. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Discuss online posting for enforcement documents and board orders, including privacy and transparency considerations. Gabe, do you want to tee this up? I know we talked about it at a meeting, I think 2 meetings ago, possibly, about whether we should be posting enforcement actions. Do you want to kind of walk us through the nuance here?
Sure. This is an issue that has rattled around for a while, as everybody probably remembers. Every time there's a higher profile board action that generates interest in the documents, we kind of come back to this. And the gist is that you're a licensing agency in the end. You issue licenses and you discipline licenses. And that output, in most licensing agencies that do similar work, whether that's OPR, Medical Practice Board, Department of Health, almost always post their actions or some subset of their actions on their website for the sake of clarity and transparency, and also as a more selfish matter, so their records officers aren't overwhelmed with requests for things that obviously a lot of people are going to be interested in. Doling them out one by one is not an efficient way to administer an agency. So for all those reasons, it's appropriate, I think, if it's up to you ultimately, to have a conversation about what is appropriate, what would benefit the public and the people you serve to host on your website as a matter of course. It used to be that we could just kind of throw these things out there and wasn't it convenient? And the fact is, I think that there are some pragmatic considerations about fairness. There's a distinction to be made between what is public under the Public Records Act, in the sense that somebody could technically get it if that person made a request, and what is publicized, what things the agency is going to take an affirmative step to put out there, whether that's through a press release, whether that is through posting them on an orders page or something like that. If you decide to take a step in that direction, I think, if you treat what most agencies with a similar mandate do, you're probably bound to take a step in that direction sooner than later. The question is how far and what documents. And then that raises some fairness considerations that I can talk with you a little bit about. But among those is, on one hand, the charging document, a notice of violation, is a public record. Somebody's entitled to know that it exists and see it, publish it wherever they want. At the same time, the notice of violation, until it has a response, until that's resulted in either a stipulation or a hearing and an order, stands as an accusation that hasn't been adjudicated. And not everybody might understand that if they just Google a name and they get this official looking thing from the government. So there are privacy and fairness considerations. I think it's very important that you apply these rules equally. We don't want to select out people for public embarrassment. That said, it is a legitimate consideration what degree of public interest there is in a thing. It makes sense if you have a major order that affects the entire marketplace and, for example, takes an actor out of it that other actors would need to know about, to be louder about that than somebody getting a hard time about paperwork. Probably nobody cares about that. It isn't unfair or discriminatory to give the obviously more public interest thing more airtime, but you need principles by which to do it. And the final consideration is the vehicle that you use to do it. And we've tried to be sensitive to this because especially now that AI is crawling all kinds of things, once you put something out there, it's out there and you can't always get it back. You can take it off your own servers and it lives on other people's. So we're trying to think about what would be the appropriate documents, weighing up for each type of document. How do you weigh the public's interest in knowing about it and the value of transparency and broad dispersion against the more abstract risks of putting complex information out in the world where it can be taken out of context and misunderstood. And people might make unfair assumptions about what certain things mean. At the end of the day, I think the legal answer is mostly you put it out and it's on other people to understand what it is, and you hope they do, but you can't control that. At the same time, there are classes of information. It's very hard to imagine a very big interest in public interest in understanding, obscure change in our corporate name or something. Does that really need press of the same type of as a major disciplinary action that affects public safety? Probably not. So we've talked a little bit about your policy options. It is not essential that you make a decision today. I think the more important thing is just that we start this conversation and maybe hear from people at the next meeting about what they want and expect and what they might be afraid of in terms of if I'm running a retail store, I don't want the first person who complains about me to be able to supersede all my marketing. And so we do have a way to deal with that in the sense that complaints that don't result in investigation are not public. We can't put them online. So it is, people should know they're protected a little bit, just like, your dentist or an architect would be protected from one disgruntled person. The complaint itself doesn't get airtime only if it's substantiated. It results in official action and then results in a case. But even so, you've got these cases and they walk all the way through what is a record. This is defined in the Administrative Procedure Act, the Section 901A. Section 809E, I'm sorry, of Title III. But the pleadings, the motions, the intermediate rulings in a case, all of the evidence received are considered. So, in concept, you could put an entire transcript or recording online. One, that's a lot of data to host. Two, most people don't do that. It's very intrusive. But you could. Three, a statement of matters officially noticed. That usually means your notice of violation. 4, questions and offers of proof, objections, and rulings. That's really the hearing transcript and the exhibits. 5, proposed findings and exceptions. We don't really use those in our process. And 6, any decision, opinion, or report. That's the no-brainer to put up your final order. And then there are things like final orders can be appealed. And so how will you be transparent in your presentation about those that are final, and those that somebody may be still exercising a legal right to challenge before an appellate officer before the Supreme Court? So that's a lot to throw at you at once. I don't, up to the board, I think how far it wants to go today. I think more important that we begin a conversation about this that can result in a policy in a month or two about what range of documents is most appropriate to put up. Inevitably, somebody will ask, well, should this be prospective or retrospective? It should probably be retrospective. You should probably treat all of your actions with the same, regardless of whether or not there was a policy in effect at the time. But it does change things a little bit. It may change what people want to admit when they come to a stipulation, if they know it's going to be broadcast. There's a lot about that. Most of it is kind of common sense, but so I think I've said enough about that, and we can move on to another topic unless you want to begin the discussion today.
I think we should begin the discussion today. So let me just make sure I heard you right. A notice of violation under our section of the public records law is a public document.
Yes.
Okay. And okay.
So is the response.
And the response. Okay. But there's an open question about whether we need to publish that or just wait for a request.
Public versus publicized.
Right.
Yeah.
So, personally, I feel like, yes, there is value to seeing in a single place how the board has reasoned issues, how many issues we've had to deal with, the types and nature of them. So I do like the stipulated resolutions, the kind of final orders, any post-decision orders, any appellate documents, the kind of appellate orders. I think those are common sense. Mm-hmm. The notices of violation, those essentially it's us making a finding or compliance making a finding that they've got more likely than not this occurred. It's not necessarily been litigated though.
Yeah, I think it would be, I think that the notice of violation is often like the starting point of the conversation, and some of those things are resolved as soon as somebody gets the notice, and that's all there is to it. So I don't know. I mean, I've always felt that this was really important, as you know, but I don't think everything needs to be out there. I agree with you. Like the stipulated resolutions, the final orders, maybe we wait until after the appeal time lapses before it goes up, something like that. The post-decision orders, you know, certainly anything that goes to a court and is decided by an appellate officer.
Yeah, no, I'm comfortable with all the things we've discussed. I think as far as NOVs go, I'm wondering if there's appetite to consider thinking about the gravity of the NOV or the category of violation. Does it impact? Obviously, we'd put out like a health and safety warning accompanying an NOV if it were for some thing that was market wide as far as its impact that would impact consumers. But is there and I'm thinking about how we discuss this or take feedback in the next board meeting if we're going to move this in this direction for over the next month or two. Like, is it category 1 violations maybe, you know, have that type of notoriety, or, you know, category 5 violations on somebody's late renewal? That's different. You know what I mean?
That makes sense. And I think like if you're looking for that line, it probably makes sense to kind of adopt one that already exists rather than draw one somewhere else. To the extent it already exists, it's probably the line between a notice of violation and a notice of violation with immediate effect. The latter would usually be a more safety.
Just thinking out loud.
Yeah.
Is there an opportunity to distinguish between types of NOVs if we're gonna be if a news, you know, station or member of the public catches wind and requests it anyways, and it ends up God knows where?
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple of goals that I think I would have in mind for this. One is that people can look at it and see how the board has dealt with certain issues and consider how it applies to their business, right?
Sure.
And then it also might direct how people do business. They may or may not want to do business with somebody who has, depending on the level of violation, and they should be able to know that. So as we kind of frame it, those are the goals I'm thinking of.
But all those stipulated resolutions, final orders of the board, post-decision orders, findings, I think all that, you know, all that makes sense. I want people to understand where we are and how we got there, you know.
Yeah, and we could talk to Mike too. Mike is here, he could give us more color, but I would say most, if not all, NOVs are usually class 1 violation. We wouldn't do an NOV for anything that falls into there.
This is like hand washing at a restaurant, right? Like you forgot to put the sign up, put the sign up, it's done, right? Like it's.
Yeah, Mike could be, I don't know, Mike, do you have anything to add about NOVs and publicizing?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with the consensus that the stipulated agreements are probably the best to post on the website. I mean, I think also notices violation with immediate effect, something that directly impacts human health or consumer protection. Those I think could have some weight to be put on the website. But, you know, when public documents have been out in the past before they've been litigated, it causes confusion within the community. And just to limit that confusion, I think it's generally best practice, at least from my perspective, just to put out the final board orders, any decisions from the court or stipulated agreements.
So I want to talk a little bit about potential reputational harm. I know like data scrapers and AI keep things forever once it's been posted, but we do, I mean, the countervailing point to posting all this stuff is that this will follow a business around in perpetuity. You know, and we've seen some of the facts are people at their lowest point doing something crazy, and then they rehabilitate themselves and they kind of come into compliance, and you know, years have passed, and are we going to still like hold them to this? Like Agency of Agriculture, I use them because we have so many cultivators. You know, it's, what do they post all their violations?
I was there. I don't believe they posted them on the website, at least within my certain part of the agency. We didn't post our notice of violations.
I wonder if other agencies, though, that are also regulated by the same, like the EPA, for example, or the USDA, who would also have a hand in any kind of action that ag would do, I would imagine.
Yeah. Yeah.
They post them online. I
Yeah,
mean, maybe our
it does.
local
Yeah.
Department of Ag doesn't, but there might be a federal agency that does. We don't have that federal oversight here.
Yes, yeah, all the federal issues, EPA posts all of those.
Okay, in perpetuity?
Yeah.
Okay. I just, obviously this is not criminal law, but we do have a robust expungement process for criminal history records. I wonder if we are going to post these, whether there should be a ability after, 2 years, 5 years to request that they be taken down. I know that after they've been scraped by these data scrapers, they're never coming down,
Right,
they're not going to be
screenshot
disappeared.
out there somewhere.
Right. So that's one consideration. We don't have to decide that now. One thing that comes to mind thinking about this policy. And the other thing, which Gabe, you mentioned in your memo, which is, should this be a queryable database, or should this be just a posting, like a list? I think the Department of Corrections, you can see anyone who's in the custody of the Commissioner of Corrections, but you have to enter, certain information. It's not just, or court documents. It's not just a list of every single person. And that helps to protect some,
Yep. I think it should be queryable. Yeah, I don't think for one thing, in order for just keeping the data in a good way, I think a queryable database is what you need. I don't know if we actually need to purchase something or if it can be done through Power BI or something that the state already uses. And I had another question and it's gone. Oh, pharmacists and doctors and dentists. Is that that I feel like that's there forever on the OPR website.
It is, and having had some experience with that, I don't think it's possible to run an equitable system of administrative expungement. What actually happens is that people with a lot of money wind up persisting for years.
Sure. Okay.
But it is smart to then think about and be careful about what we say in those documents. Do we gratuitously use third-party names? Can we just use initials?
Right.
So we can try to develop these things with just little words.
Yeah.
So it does, in terms of the range of options for today, it sounds like you're kind of landing around wanting to tell staff to come up with a system for final orders of the board, right? Stipulated resolutions of violations, and in very unusual cases, appellate documents. It won't be fair to include those. There's a separate question that I didn't bring up with you about, do you want this to extend to licensing decisions that have to do with qualifications for licenses, but not violations? The most common one we all know about is the one license rule. On one hand, you put a lot of words on paper about how the board thinks through that. It seems to me important to be able to show other businesses, members of the bar, that there's a standard here and it's been carefully developed and consistent. At the same time, those tend very strongly, as you all know, to involve people's personal business affairs and close family affairs. So it's a tighter, it's a tighter rope to walk. You might want to start with disciplinary stuff and violations and then see how it goes.
Yeah.
That would be an option.
We record those meetings, right? But we do not, there's no minutes produced.
No,
are there?
The transcript stands.
Okay.
So all the parts that you could get out of a disciplinary process, you can get out of a license.
Right, but we don't have like a final, or we do have a final decision, but it's not, that's requestable, right? As a public document. I'm just trying to
you have
wrap the same logic around the.
It's a weird because you only have to make a written decision if it's adverse to the applicant.
Right.
So somebody looking at all your written decisions would think, oh, they just deny everybody. In fact, you can just say on the record, you're fine. Go ahead.
So it makes me wonder if that's actually, I mean, yes, I think we should think about that a little bit more, but I wonder if it's actually helpful if only the adverse decisions are there and not the things we've allowed. Right, because then it doesn't tell you what is allowed. It only tells you what isn't allowed.
Yes, although sometimes people are interested in what has been allowed. They want to know what analogous case, that guy got it. Why didn't I get it?
Right.
I think I'm similar. It's a tough thing.
Yeah.
I think, the simpler thing to do would be to focus on violations at this point, and then maybe cross that bridge at another point.
I think that's a good idea.
All right. I think that is the direction we'd like to go. Final orders, stipulated resolutions for disciplinary issues.
So we'll look into that because the queryable system will require some research cost, staff time. So again, we'll work
Okay.
to come up with something and revisit that with you.
Yeah, that is everyone's preference to have a queryable database, not a list.
Yeah, let's see what
That is
our options are after some thoughtful kind of investigating by the staff.
that is what other agencies use. They're not like just post it. Well, I mean, at least OPR and DLL, it's all like a queryable Power BI something. It's not just pasted
I've
onto
heard,
the website.
as if to further complicate this, I've heard both things. I know they had queryable stuff, and when we say that, we mean you type in the name you're looking
Yeah.
for to get the result back. And then I heard separately that some of those were thought not to comply with accessibility rules.
Oh.
And so some people were going back to just listing them all. So it's a whole big thing, but
There is a standard that the state ADS is deploying now, the WCAG standard.
Mhm.
So I think if in communications with them, I'm sure they'll bring it up.
Yeah, so we'll take a little
Yeah.
time to
that can be part of the
Yeah.
system building.
Okay. All right. Moving down. This is discuss non-payment and collection as related to the role and authority of the board. Gabe, I think this is, I mean, I said something at one of our work group meetings, I think may have caused some confusion because we got complaints about this, that, just general complaints, not anything case specific, but just, and I thought back to the 2 rule changes that we made in 2025 about consignment and about kind of how we can look at historical non-payment to creditors and things like that. I remembered that and I said, yeah, we have authority to do this. So go ahead and send your complaints. But I think there's a little bit more nuance to this.
There is, and you didn't cause this one.
Okay, all right.
This was coming up organically because it's a real problem in the world. People,
Right.
our licensees are contacting anybody who will listen and saying, I'm just threatening my business if people don't pay for the things they've ordered and that it provides them. So it's smart then to take a minute and talk about kind of the role of an administrative agency like yours and how it relates to the role of the judiciary and what each of those can deliver and can't deliver when these problems happen. They're going to happen in commerce. I think we all wish that they didn't happen as often, but there's this kind of simple syllogism that sort of says, okay, disputes are bad. In this case, we've got disputes going on between 2 entities that are licensed. Can't the licensing authority get in there and tell them to act right? And not unreasonable on its face. But for practical and legal reasons that sometimes have to do with separation of powers, sometimes have to do with what you can actually have the capacity to do. The board and a licensing agency like the board is well situated to deal with habitual offenders who are systemically and obviously entering into agreements in bad faith. That you can deal with. And as Pepper was saying, you did some important work in your most recent rule update to give yourself some tools to deal with that. What doesn't happen what really isn't possible that I think people sometimes wish were possible was that there was a big dispute where I'm a cultivator. I've got one major client. The client stiffed me. It's threatening my ability to exist. It's a big problem. Something needs to be done. I need some help. That's really a court issue. And the reason it's a court, and often the small claims court, I think we want our people to remember, you don't necessarily need to hire a lawyer and pay a huge filing fee. The small claims court is really accessible. In Vermont, we're lucky to have that, and it works in many cases. So if you need to collect, there's some place you can go. But the reason that an administrative agency like this one can't settle a 2-party dispute through a complaint is that inevitably what's going to happen is the complaint is going to be, A didn't pay me, make them pay me. Here's the invoice. I delivered the stuff. And when you go to inquire of A in the investigative process, it's very unlikely that person's going to say, he's absolutely right. I stiffed him. I have the money. I won't pay him because nobody's making me, now make me. And then you will, and everything will be fine.
Specific performance.
Yes, and so which is contract enforcement, which you can't do. That's only courts enforce contracts, which is important. But more important on practical grounds is what is that going to say? He's never going to say that. He always says, the product was bad, it was delivered on time, or not according to our agreement, or the party that says I owe money actually owes me some money as an offset for something that happened months before. But it's very, very unusual, almost unheard of, that somebody just says, yeah, I'm doing the wrong thing because I can. Tough. Make me do something. Almost always that party has an explanation, whether it's credible or not. isn't something that you can decide as an administrative agency, because you only deal with single parties before you as alleged violators of your rules and statutes. You can't have two people before you and say, okay, one is right, one is wrong, the wrong one pays the right one, as tempting as that is. So the ultimate message in terms of what, I think people that are trying to get assistance from the government with this kind of look and say, well, what are you? I'm getting mixed messages. You're telling me on one hand, this is a big deal, and on the other, you don't care. And for those reasons, the messages are mixed. But I think a summary of them is, licensing agency can't settle disputes between private parties for legal reasons. We can only act on big picture, persistent patterns of misconduct or outright fraud. That is to say, when the person at the time the arrangement was made very clearly didn't intend to honor it. That's a different story. But simple uncollectible debt is more complicated than that and has to be dealt with in court. It's not a waste of time to file a complaint with us. We like keeping records and keeping track so that we can see big picture patterns. But what we don't want is for somebody who files one of those complaints to think it's really helping him. It's probably not. It might help the next guy or the next guy after that. But it's not an effective way to get intervention in collecting that particular debt. So that can be really frustrating. We'll say, yes, we're interested, we care, we're keeping a file. And, once it happens 7 times or 5 times or something, we'll do something, or we'll be able to do something. But that is kind of true practically. And I wouldn't want it to prevent people pursuing their immediate actions. They can try to collect on that debt through the courts and through other means. And I wouldn't want them to lose time thinking that something could happen here. Also want to very quickly talk about the 3 changes that you made in your most recent rules that do give you some stuff, and I think really speak to the importance that you've assigned to this. Your Rule 1.1.1, effective in October of 25, adds to the list of things that can make somebody ineligible to obtain or continue to hold an ID card. And among the things that are added is conviction of a crime of deceit, exploitation, or fraud, or repeated failures to satisfy civil judgments, pay creditors as agreed, or meet tax obligations. And so if somebody leaves the market having stiffed all of his creditors, you as an agency can remember that, and you can keep them out if the person returns or seeks to return. And in extreme cases, you could take an action to revoke their ID card.
That was okay.
If they come up for renewal,
you don't have to wait. I mean, it would really have to be pretty egregious, but you could take an action.
I'm thinking like, let's say the same character, we've received complaints about the same retailer, not picking on retailers, but they haven't paid X number of cultivators, they're up for renewal. I think it would be great to know that is hanging out there, and factor it into our analysis as to whether or not somebody should be renewed at that time, even if those kind of more emergency immediate remedies, as you discussed, don't call us to revoke the license immediately.
Yes, I mean, that person would be entitled to a little bit of process outside of the renewal about whether or not they can keep the card. But renewal is a good point in time to just say, hey, this is when we do our annual check-in and things are not looking good. You're at risk of having an action against your card or something. You also had your Rule 2.8.14, which is a big deal to protect cultivators. Consignment is not allowed, meaning cultivators meant to be paid for the goods. They're actually meant to transfer legal ownership. A retailer can't be a consignment shop. They have to actually purchase, and receivables can't go longer than 90 days. And that's a funny one. And if somebody comes and says, I got stiffed, I wrote I had a 120-day payment arrangement. So didn't you violate the rule? You're supposed to keep it short. That's more of an encouragement to people not to stick their necks out too far than it is something where we can really enforce it. But it stands. But what it does is shapes the culture in the industry. Nothing goes longer than 90 days unpaid. You're not allowed to have agreements like that. And when cannabis is being sold to a retailer, it's really being sold. So those changes in 2.8.14 hopefully mitigated some of these problems. And then finally, more generally, you added to your Rule 4.5.1, which is the list of Category 1 violations, general one that is found elsewhere in regulatory law for conduct of a character likely to deceive, defraud, or harm the public. Very general, but fraudulent behavior generally. So those are the outlines. Just wanted to kind of put that out there so that you could understand, and people who have these problems in the marketplace, which are serious, they're not trivial, and they are, you know, in some cases they come in waves, understand what the agency can and can't do, and where it's appropriate to jump over to the small claims court probably.
Yeah. And if they get some sort of judgment in small claims court, and can they share it with us as part of their complaint? I mean, I want people to go through the court process to get their best chance of getting paid, right?
Yes, and they should.
Yeah.
Because you know, the thing I'm saying is you guys don't try to adjudicate things between two people.
Right.
You can't. There, it's already been adjudicated.
Right.
The court has said. And so, yes, if you have a judgment that is unsatisfied by another licensee, that totally warrants letting us know about, but you got to get the judgment.
Right.
Yes, thank you for clearing that up, because I did feel like I feel like I did misspeak, or at least blur the facts about what we did and what the effect of it was. So I think it's important for us to be clear in our mind what we should and shouldn't be doing, what we should and shouldn't consider.
We only received a handful of complaints in that time. I did ask.
Okay.
So it wasn't
All right.
like there was a flood.
Okay.
You know, there may be some bad actors out there that a lot of people are dealing with, and that is the problem. And I think we don't want people to make a business practice out of contracting with people and then not paying them, and having small cultivators go under, and finding a way through to market dominance that way. I think we've talked about that before, but there is the small claims court process. There are processes that are like low entry, easy to do on your own. And then it seems like we can get that information and have it impact how we make our licensing decisions. And I think that's fair.
Anything more on this one? No? Okay. The next one, this is to one of the public comments we received earlier, that what we did, I guess it was last meeting, is we looked at some updates to the product registration guidance. And because we, you know, all felt that, you know, anytime you force someone to change their label, there's going to be costs involved, that we would just give 30 days to get some feedback before that took effect, so we can make changes in the interim. And the process has worked. We've got comments and we made changes. So I'm curious, is it Mike that is going to walk through
happy
those?
to jump in here.
Yeah.
Do you want me to broadcast the?
Probably. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Are we ready to go?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So we received 3 comments, or 4 comments. 2 of the comments were about the same issue. So I'll address the first comment we received first. It should be on page 22, Gabe. And it, got to go. Okay, there we go. Down a little bit farther. So it's under the concentrates extracts section. This one was a really simple comment. It was just commenting on resin. I think you have to go down a little bit more. There we go. There you go. So, oops, sorry. So the comment we received basically wanted to clarify that you can produce resin also using supercritical CO2 extraction. We had added this whole section of definitions about different types of products and how they're produced. And originally, as you can see here, we only included hydrocarbon solvents as the only method of producing resin. And we didn't, exclude supercritical CO2 extraction from the definition intentionally. We honestly just forgot to include it. So totally happy to include that in the definition. So that's
great.
Thank you. Yep.
And then there's the font.
The fonts, yes.
Somebody will be very happy who is not happy with the font.
Yeah.
Find it for you. And I should emphasize, this was in the original. This 10-point thing was not added by you guys. It's been in there forever. And the problems with it are, I think people are correct.
Yes, right,
Yeah.
yes.
So to keep this one really short, we received 2 comments about this. And we're happy to recommend that instead of requiring a 10-point font, that the health warning just be legible on labels. Enforcing font size is almost impossible for our product registration team to do using the tools that we have regardless. It makes much more sense for our compliance agents to enforce this through their inspection process. If they see any products with a health warning that is impossible to read, then we can take our own means to make sure that that gets corrected. So we're just basically recommending that that gets changed to comfortably legible by a person of ordinary visual acuity.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I don't want the compliance team to have to be regulating font size. I like to say, I remember in law school having a citation blown up to 100%, and them looking at an italicized comma and then flagging me for italicizing a comma. Like, that's ridiculous. You know, I understand in a legal document context, but just work with the compliance team. Like, let's make sure it's readable. I think in the early days we saw people trying to squeeze like 2 and 3 point fonts into labels. So like, let's just be pragmatic.
I think that's where the 10-point might have come from in an iteration of this, was because people were trying to make it so small.
Exactly.
And there is a growing population of people who are like 65, 70, 80. You know, I'm in my late 40s and I have to like shine a flashlight and blow things up with my phone to see them. So I empathize.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
There were
so,
those
like,
instances where we'd have to take a picture and then zoom in to actually see what it says.
Yeah.
So, there is one more comment.
Can I just say one quick aside about that health warning right there? That Julie has very graciously,
Patrick too.
okay, and Patrick taking the lead. There's, in Canada, they legalize cannabis nationwide. And so they have the full support of their statewide public health department to study the impacts of legalization. And they have found that having a long health warning just like that one is not an effective strategy. And they have much shorter, like 2-sentence or 1-sentence warnings that either rotate or the licensee can pick from. And Julie has been working with our Department of Health to get them on board with that.
Yeah.
And they're actually seemingly willing to revisit this conversation and do what's effective. And they met with Health Canada.
We met with Health Canada, with the health department. We've been going through actually narrowing that. Health Canada has a longer list. We've narrowed it down to maybe half of what they have. And we have some, fine tuning to do, and hopefully we'll get it to the next rulemaking process and we'll make everybody happy.
And just a finer point, if that ever does come to be, there will certainly be sell-through dates and long runways to include a new warning label. Since we heard some of that in the commentary today, we've tried to do that at every step of the way over the last 5 or 6 years. So we're cognizant of that.
Yes, exactly. Last comment is under the section when distinct registration is required. I don't have a page reference for you, Gabe. So this specific comment asks us, so I should mention that this section wasn't changed during the latest revamp of the guidance, but we received a comment on the section regardless. And it asks us basically to sort of redefine what this means. And long story short, the comment asks us to consider including multiple package sizes within a product registration submission. And although I understand their perspective, we recommend that we don't implement that change because when you do that, we lose the ability to track weights in various sizes through the point of sale. We use the product registration number specifically for that purpose. It also creates a challenge for us when we're trying to, if there is a recall, we can, right now we can pinpoint individual products and individual SKUs and sizes. It would make our work to do that much more difficult if we had different packaging sizes and effectively different products within a different PR submission.
Yeah, well, thank you, Mike. Thank you all of compliance and, you know, for
Considering comments.
yeah, for leaving this open for a little bit. I know a lot of work went into actually making these changes in the first place, and to carefully consider the comments is very useful. So I agree with all of the recommended changes and the non-changes that compliance presented today. I don't know if we need a motion, or because I think the way we voted initially, it doesn't require a motion.
Except we made a few edits,
Okay.
so I wonder if we'll need to accept this newest edited version or maybe not.
Gabe, do you have a thought on that? Whether we need to accept the?
Yeah, it would make sense to vote, just to vote to adopt the recommendations, and then we'll know to go ahead and change it.
Okay, great. Is there a motion on that?
Yep, I move that the board adopt the PR guidance amendments recommended to the board in the red line shown.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thanks, Mike. Next one is around consumer privacy and consent relating to ID scanners and third-party apps. You want to tee this one up for us? I know it's, I mean, I can just say at the outset that this is an incredibly serious issue. Given the legal status of cannabis federally, I mean, the federal government still considers this a crime, even though they're, you know, moving to reschedule or whatever. They rescinded the Cole memo. There's implications for gun ownership rights. And so just, you know, there's a incredible lack of transparency with some of these data collection services, what information they collect, its accuracy, how it's protected from data breaches, and who they're selling it to. So I just want to put the context out there that this is, like, to me, when we originally drafted our rules, we were all pretty adamant about consent, informed consent around data collection, and things in the world have only gotten crazier since then with AI and everything else. So just it's a preempting this conversation. Sorry.
No, it's a good entree because that's what's happening.
Right.
And I should say that last month, there was a case called Himani that was decided by the United States Supreme Court that did reverse there and deem unconstitutional the reviled thing about, you know, how you have habitual drug user and so, but that goes more to Second Amendment people, but be aware of, if you're a gun owner who's concerned about this, or somebody interested in Second Amendment rights who's concerned about this, be aware of that money decision.
Yep.
But the underlying problem is the same, because there are 18 different versions of the same thing. At what point are cannabis consumers enthusiastic about being put on lists? Not very. So I think it's best to start with what is the rule you have now. Your current rule 2.8.3 E is the one that we're really talking about in terms of what's the regulatory framework right now. It provides that a retailer may not record or retain any additional personal information from a visitor without the visitor's permission. That pretty much means what it says. Any additional personal information, to that's required to complete a transaction is pretty much anything but how much is your change and here's your receipt. That doesn't sit very well with the modern world of retail and with the modern world of IoT, or of integrated point of sale systems and scanners, because and among other things, those products are almost universally created by national or international, software and hardware purveyors. Our individual dispensaries are not sitting down writing the code about how much we're going to collect and what are we going to do with it. But they're often put to a difficult choice, just like you or I are, when we choose to use any digital service, whether it's our home burglar alarm or whatever, our Ring camera. In the course of getting the thing that we want in order to do our business, whether that's a video doorbell or a point of sale system, you're often made to give up certain privacy rights and certain information rights that you weren't necessarily paying attention to. And I think we've seen that with, Ring doorbells. All of a sudden they're being used to search for lost dogs or something. And isn't this great? And I think a lot of people who had them on their doors were thinking, I actually did not mean to put that into a surveillance network. Similarly, when a cannabis retailer gets a suite of transaction systems, the point of sale, it usually comes with the whole kind of entourage. You've got your actual point of sale system, a bunch of internal tracking software and inventory management software, and often these scanners. And I think they're often tied together. The question isn't always what does the retailer think it's doing, it's what is the purveyor of the equipment doing that the retailer might not necessarily have known to zero in on. But at the end of the day, that can result in people who are not interested in being on a list and have not given any kind of affirmative consent to having extra information collected as your Rule 2.8.3E requires, getting put on national databases, consumer databases that are then sold by data brokers. So, I recall there was a comment kind of saying, listen, the Attorney General is going to enforce the data brokerage law. And yes, that's true, but we don't have the capacity to do that. We don't want it. But we need people to be aware of it. And I think we need to start a conversation really quite urgently because this technology is moving fast about what is acceptable under 283E. It seems very clear that many of the technologies out there do not square well with that rule right now. I've gone into a dispensary and had my record scanned, and I could see populating on the screen in front of the bud tender the personal information that was taken from the scan, and nobody said, "Do you mind having that done?" And that's an experience that I think most consumers at this point in Vermont have had. And the question is, at what point is that tolerable? There are some other problems around data privacy in medical. That are, we're going to have to cross those bridges when we come to it. It may be the federal government asking, there's a case of kind of be careful what you collect because people might start demanding to find it, whether they buy it on the market from data brokers or whether they subpoena it from regulatory agencies. You don't have to manage what you don't collect. And so sometimes it's not smart to collect gratuitously. So we may have circumstances in the future where we have to address the medical privacy issues alongside data privacy issues for medical patients. It is not uncommon, I think it should be uncommon, but it's not for people in medical cannabis space to assure consumers they're HIPAA compliant. Well, HIPAA compliant, first, they're probably not a covered entity, so I don't know that they should be telling people that. Right. But if you're representing to the consumer, I follow the HIPAA rules. One of those rules is don't collect information like this in a system like that.
Unless you ask. Right, you can collect information. You can provide information. Yeah.
Yes, I mean consent covers a lot of sins, both in healthcare and here.
Yeah.
So what this conversation probably ends up in isn't so much what is the board going to allow in terms of collection, because as other people said, that's not really your domain. It's more what is the board going to require in terms of clarity of consent and manner of recording consent before some of this stuff happens. Certainly, there are consumers that do not mind. They would rather be in the loyalty program and have everybody have their stuff. But there are consumers that do mind, and they're entitled by your rule to a little more certainty about what's going on. So I'll wrap up and just say, this is a big topic. So, this is another one of those where I think conversation needs to start now, probably is not going to end today. But there you are with that discussed.
I think there's one question I have is how do those, because a lot of them they generate with scanning the ID. Mm-hmm. And then how does that then feed into the API that then feeds our track and trace? And is that a necessary step or not? So that's a question I have, because I know a lot of those POS systems are built to be integrated, right?
Our API doesn't demand anything other than what we need for data tracking purposes. Most of it's the gap, the kind of commercially interesting information that doesn't have a regulatory purpose really.
Mike maybe but a little bit.
Yeah, that wouldn't feed into our PI at current. It's really only product data that we would need for regulatory purpose.
Right, but that's how, I've never used Dutchie, right? But in other POS systems, sometimes it's like you're putting in the customer, you're looking up the customer and what they've purchased, and then that goes directly to your inventory. So it's all connected. So I guess the question is, regardless of what we decide, if we change something, we need to know what we're going to break before and what we're going to fix and what's going to make things difficult or
Yeah.
easier, right? So that's one question I have. And then I think it's really like how we word the rule, like, you know, what is permission? Should we actually change the rule the next time we change rules to be clearer about exactly what we're saying? Like that you have to get explicit. Yeah.
Yes, because
Like,
what
is
you'll hear.
permission that I have handed you my ID there? I've given you my permission, right? Like, I
Yeah,
just think we
they're
need to
on,
be
you know,
clearer.
page 351 of the end user licensing agreement. Nobody read. It's a, you know,
Right.
There's a related issue about apps, which is, you know, just now seeing, we've seen in advertising. The same is, you know, software and hardware providers often are making available now to cannabis retailers, you know, branded store apps that a consumer can download. Feels a little bit different in the consent world because the consumer has certainly taken the affirmative step of going to the app store and finding the thing and downloading
Right.
it. Those that are particular about privacy might not do that. Same time, nobody has the faintest clue what those apps are collecting, including, to be honest, I think some of the retailers that are using, you know, they say, well, what are you collecting? And they say, well, listen, we bought it from this person. We don't do our own code here, and we assume it's okay, but there hasn't necessarily been looking. So one question is how an app integrates into your information collection rule 2.8.3. Another is, what does that mean for advertising if the app is basically a client with which to see a website? And it can send you notifications. If I want to put on a sale, I can send notifications to the app or something. That is advertising under the statutory definition, you know.
Is the website advertising? Is the website menu advertising?
Yes, well, any presentation that's meant to, or that has tend to have the effect of inducing sales is advertising. You've kind of given store websites a special place where everybody has one. The content is pretty much static, so nobody is submitting their entire website as long as they age gate it. The trouble, and that's worked out just fine for everybody, but the trouble with the app is that it can act as sort of a parallel website, where it isn't necessarily a case the content that's on the main website is the content that's on the app, and nobody is looking. I mean, it's not, you know, that doesn't mean anything's untoward, but it does mean that you've got a means of delivering content, promotional content, that is effectively unmonitored unless you get in the business of putting the advertising through in between the person programming the app. So it's a big mess, basically. And I think before any decisions can be made about it, you probably just want to understand what these are, what they do, and what they're collecting. And only then can you really tell, okay, is this an advertising problem? Is it a privacy problem, or is it not a problem?
Yeah, because it seems to me like an app is and a push notification are pretty much the same as a website and an email, right? And those are things that we allow, that we treat in a particular way as it relates to advertising. Like people don't have to, or maybe I'm wrong about this, but they don't have to run by every change of their website by our advertising team, right? And if they do a template email, they don't have to run that by.
They do have to get email blasts would have to be approved. They go
Right.
through really fast.
But if it's a template, they can just update the template, right? And I don't see how that's different than a push notification.
For those who have gone through that template process, so if you have an approved template, you can keep using it. I've never seen anybody say, I want to use this template to include the app. And then they're, you know, so.
Right. No, I'm drawing a parallel between that template and a push notification being the same thing. So if your push notification is, you know, we've updated our menu and you say that every week at, you know, 2:00 on Tuesday, how is that different than sending out your template with your updated sales or whatever it is? It's literally the same thing in a different modality, right?
Yeah, I mean, it depends what the content is. So you could use the same push notification vehicle to push a template that's totally been approved. That's just, you know, this week's menu, nothing new. Or you could use it to push content that says, you know, cannabis will regrow your hair.
Right. So some of those need to be approved and some of them don't. Right.
Yeah,
so
basically the template rule still works. If you got a template, you got a template. But most people don't. In fact, I've never seen a template that addressed the app as a delivery vehicle.
Well, maybe we will know.
But it'll come. I mean, it's like within the space of a few weeks, the app things are kind of popping up.
Yeah,
so
apps generally they're generated from a website, right? And so they might not have the same content, but sometimes that's just because the programming doesn't work the same.
Yes, I think the important thing from a regulatory perspective to communicate right now is not understanding your app doesn't mean
Right.
that you're not accountable for advertising violations that result from your not understanding your app. And so if it's pushing unapproved stuff at people,
Right.
then that, you know, we don't regulate software providers, we regulate
Right.
retail, in this case, retailers, and that would be who caught the violation. So
And I
it's-
agree with the, like,
yeah.
if you download the app, right, that's basically your click wrap agreement. Like you've already said, I agree to the content. If you don't read it, that's the consumer's issue, right? There are some of those like terms of agreements that say like, I promise to like buy a hippo or whatever, and they're
Yeah.
not, like they put it in there to be funny.
Yeah.
You know, that exists, and there's already a basis for that.
Right. Yeah, it's sort of how much do you, you know, what do you find acceptable in terms of
Right.
consent? I don't think it has to be in the cannabis space. I don't think that is synonymous with the absolute minimum tolerable to anyone in commerce. I think you can say this is a more sensitive issue to cannabis consumers. It has higher risks if their information is gathered without their consent. And so there is a higher standard for what constitutes informed consent to allow somebody to collect this stuff. I think that's permissible because I mean, the truth is nobody reads their EULAs and nobody's going to start.
And some of that's simple, right? Like it's just your screen that you turn around and you say, yeah, that's fine. That's my information. Keep, like Best Buy does, right? Like, yeah, that's my information. Send me coupons that I will delete. But like, you know, like there's an easy way to get people's consent or to allow them to decline, right? Okay.
And the first step is making sure that's happening in some form.
Right.
And we know
I understand
at the
that
point
problem,
of
yeah.
scanning, anybody that's been awake in Vermont knows that is not happening
Yeah.
all the time with the scanner. People are just saying, you need to do this, you're not coming in.
Do appreciate how it is an important tool in some communities, whether it's college towns or touristy areas, to kind of give bud tenders the ability to not have to be so subjective with who is over the age of 21 or 27 is what we said for coming
For
into
checking
store.
the ID.
So, you know, but it's complicated beyond that.
So I think, you know, the apps to me, I think the general gist that I'm taking away is not even app specific, but you are responsible for, you as the person submitting an advertisement is responsible for whatever medium that advertisement goes out. If there's a violation, whether it's an email, a template, or an app, you know, if you're submitting or transmitting an illegal advertisement, you're responsible, whether it's from an app or elsewhere. But I think we do need more conversation on what these apps are and how the people are using them. And I'm sure that there's a billion different options on these apps, so it's not going to be maybe a cookie cutter approach. But the most important thing to me is really about this question that we were just talking about: is permission, informed consent around data collection. I would like to hear from, I think it's probably just Dutchie and FlowHub. I don't know if we have any others, point of sales.
We have one more. I'm blanking, but they're by far the most common.
Yeah, I want to hear from them. Does it break anything to turn off the data collection? You know, like if people opt out, you know, and I want to know, how do we enforce that before the scan ever happens, that people know they have the option to opt out of data collection. Like, I know we've talked about this for years now, because I remember in 2022 or 2021, we were developing our rules, like, are people going to be able to collect this data from me? And the answer was no. We wrote it right in our rules, no. And I know that it's happening too. So, so are there strategies, Mike or Gabe, to like ensure that at that communication that it is informed consent? I mean, is there, again, like Dave Silverman said that he's got a sign that talks about data collection, scanning. Is there?
If I were a business owner, I think I would want to document. I wouldn't want to rely on the hope or the expectation that most people saw a sign. I think if I'm putting somebody in my data collection club, whatever that is, I probably want to give them a standard form that says we are collecting data in excess of that necessary to complete the transaction. You need to understand that, sign here and put the data on it and then put it in a folder.
And that could be a digital form.
Yeah, I'd like to know if that's built into Dutchy and Flow Hub, like if that's something that they
It's
just
just like the
have.
cookies pop up. Do you accept?
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
Right.
But also, if you don't accept, right, they still get to check your age,
Yeah.
and you would say, I opt out
Yeah.
from any data.
That's why, yeah, I don't want
They're
to,
not gonna scan it, they're gonna have to eyeball it, right?
I don't mind the scan.
No, I think that's what the question is, can you scan it
Without
and
collecting
just
data.
don't keep the
That's what I
data?
want to ask
I bet
Dutchy.
that, I bet that's a no.
Right, like in alcohol sales, for example, you can get that, but nothing's being retained. You know what I mean? It just makes the happy sound and the sad sound.
Yes. All right. So, I mean, I think what's important coming out of this conversation is, again, I'll just repeat myself, but we have a rule that you're not allowed to collect data without informed consent. So if anyone who is doing that, you know, without seeking permission, explicit permission, until we at least figure out some of these other questions about, do we need a specific form? Do we need something else? That conversation should be happening at that before the scan ever happens. That those questions should be asked. And on the apps for now, you're responsible for an illegal advertisement, whether it's from an app or anywhere else.
And knowing when you need to ask, when you need to submit something and when you've done a template, yeah.
But do you want one of the recommendations that we had is that the apps show to comply with Vermont consumer protection and data brokerage law before they're made available to consumers. What is your?
Is it too early for that if the implementation date's not?
I don't know if that should be an affirmative obligation, like a pre-approval, or we hold the licensee liable if the app does violate our statutes.
Yeah, I mean, if someone were to violate the statute that's to go in place in, what is it, 28?
January
2028.
Yeah, then that could impact our license, right? I'm assuming. Their license. I mean, I agree with, I don't know how do they prove that to us? Do we evaluate it, or do they just, like, is it just like a, yes, I believe that this?
I think it's information that they dig out and give to us to assess, right? I think that's.
Yeah, and I think for the time being, the most important thing is that what Pepper was saying, the conversation needs to be between the licensee and the service provider. And it's not enough just to say, well, I don't control what the service provider does. One does need to know what their business processes are giving to other people. But obviously if we're not taking effect until 28, and then there has to be probably rulemaking around that, and it affects the whole world, not just cannabis. It's going to be a slow roll, but the part that is not slow is the immediate need to tell people if you are collecting their information what you're collecting.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, we only have Kyle for about another 10 minutes. So
I'm in a pickle and I have daycare pickup by 3:30, everybody, or else I get fined.
It's like $5 a minute, right? It's like,
So, we like to try not to get fined, whoever's listening.
So yeah, again, we are looking for comments we are looking for comments from the public, from the retailers, from anyone else about how we want to deal with this and what makes sense around getting informed consent from the customer before data is collected. But in the meantime, the rule stands that is a requirement of our rule to get permission from a consumer before it happens. The consumer can walk away. If you mandate that we collect your data, the consumer can walk out of the store and go somewhere else. But as far as you collecting, a retailer collecting without informed consent, that's just a clear violation of a really important rule. All right. Is that enough on that for now? This is a topic that I think we just need to ruminate on, get some information from Dutchy and Flow Hub and other point of sale providers.
we need,
Some information probably from the Attorney General. So
we want to hear Kyle's retail update. Right.
All right, we're moving on to that.
Mhm.
So we held the first retail siting work group. I think there's a lot, it was well attended. A lot of very passionate thinkers at that work group. I want to challenge everybody to be a little bit more constructive moving forward. I think the first work group had a lot of very good thoughts, but the PowerPoint that I presented is posted on our website. There was specific questions depending on license types that I think can really help us inform what a retail siting rule looks like. And I will say, at least from my perspective, getting principles in a retail siting rule proposed and accomplished is the key to understanding where we can have more retail stores in and around the state and allowing people to relocate. We're not ready for that yet, in my personal opinion. I think moving forward, I'm gonna look to kind of recalibrate how we can get a little bit more out of the work group and kind of be constructive. And there will be more on that next week on how we kind of look to do that. I have had conversations after the work group meeting with individuals. Some people have emailed me responses to the questions that we ask. So that's awesome. You know, it's always hard if you're asking questions and putting people on the spot in that moment without having the kind of proper thought to kind of really ruminate on the questions. It's challenging. So I want to ask if there's any work group members listening here, members of the public, those questions are important to kind of understanding, I think, when and where we think about new retail establishments. You know, I know relocation is included in this. One of the questions is, how should relocation be considered in relation to retail siting? I think I heard at least some folks say it should be the exact same, as if there's a new proprietor looking for a new retail establishment in a certain area of the state. You know, and we paused relocation for a reason. And I think that until we have a little bit more of an understanding, and I encourage folks that are interested in relocation to participate in these conversations. You know, how do we really kind of coalesce around what are some core principles and get a proposal out? This is a statutory obligation. You know, I think it's important. And again, like I said, I think if the faster and more constructive we can kind of coalesce around certain principles, you know, what we've heard about reopening retail and commentary today, and we've heard in the retail siting work group, really dictates, I think, when retail does reopen again.
Yeah, I don't want to be repetitive here, but I do want to draw a distinction again between the decision to reopen retail and having a retail siting rule. Retail siting rule, statutory obligation. It's been a directive to us for at least a year and a half now. We need to do it. And it's a separate question as to whether and when we reopen retail. And the reason why it's so important is because we're seeing situations where people need to move for one reason or the other. And we're inevitably going to see more populous towns opt in, and how we handle those relocation requests is going to be dependent on a rule, you know, and not just, we can't do it just kind of, you know, arbitrarily. So
they're not like one and the same, but I think one leads to a conversation about the other and really kind of digs in. And there will be, I think, at the next full work group meeting, I'm going to try and figure out a way to kind of capture more constructive thoughts from different schools of licensees. I think before the next full work group meeting, you know, we're looking at trying to capture some data that might inform a lot of that. And I can try my best to kind of get some information out ahead of time so people can actually come with their thoughts and not just their frustrations. Cause I think it was kind of like a vent fest about market frustrations. And I certainly understand and empathize why, but we've got to try and compartmentalize that with trying to get this task done that's statutorily obligated to the board.
And I mean, I of course know the kind of this to a lot of people feels like an existential question, the idea of retail siting. But we do need to have a rule regardless. Do you have any rough idea of a timeline for, I mean, I know you kind of have to let the process play out. We have to do something that makes sense.
I'm going to be in touch with work group participants next week about some kind of sub work group things, you know, meetings with just me, where we can really try and dig into some concepts and proposals and some kind of loose ways that we could think about this. And then, so there will be a couple of those with just me. Hopefully we can coalesce around the best option of a couple options I might be able to present at that time, and then bring the best options back to the full work group. And again, this is not giving the work group the authority to craft our, you know, our retail siting rule, but how can we all at the end of the day find something that works, consider no matter what your license type is, and kind of work towards giving the board direction on what's something that is going to be a smooth, you know, proposed rule APA process that will inevitably get this on the books a little bit more quickly.
All right. You got 4 minutes left.
Let's do it.
Do we want to table any of these issues and go straight to the licensing issues?
Is there anything that you can't vote on for licensing?
No, I did my checks. No,
Okay.
Everything's good there. And that
would be the only reason in my mind to change.
Sure. Yep. That would put you all in pickle.
What about advertising guidance and the canopy underuse? Should we just publish those, see comments, and put them on for next month?
That's basically an internal policy about enforcing the existing rules. So we just wanted you to know about it.
Oh, okay. All right.
It was, just to back up for context, the question was, you have your new rule 1.3.5, which says if you're a cultivator and you in a given year, you use less canopy than the maximum canopy allowed under the next lowest tier, we can raise questions about whether or not you adjusted. The only question really isn't what the policy should be, is how should the licensing division implement it?
Mm-hmm.
And so we have written out for you what is their workflow, basically. And to summarize,
Suite of questions to ask cultivators.
Exactly. And those were taken from Massachusetts. So like when somebody comes in under threshold in a given year, part of the renewal process will be to check. And then if the person, comes in under that number, they would then get this set of short questions that just basically say, hey, what happened? Was there something unique to this year? Same questions that are used in Massachusetts. They don't need 5 lawyers. They're not intrusive. And then that would be brought to you with the renewal, and it would just get accurate information to you when you're deciding. That's
perfect. Yes.
Is that workflow going to be on just the questions so people can prepare in advance if they know they're having a difficult year? Will that be out there with the licensing information, or?
They're so short, I'm not sure, if I surprise them with you at 3:00, you would still have your answers at 4:00.
Okay, fine.
And we don't have too many.
Yeah, they are very short.
People fall into this bucket, so we don't want to confuse folks to think that everybody needs to.
Yep.
Yeah, if you think of relegations in the future, if you do one a year, I'd be surprised. It's just not very common.
Okay.
But yeah, they're super general. They're exactly what you would think. And no point preparing.
Okay. You gonna get going?
Yeah. Advertising.
I think we'll maybe have a little bit of a discussion about it while you're going. Yeah.
All right. Sorry, everybody.
Thank you.
Dad duty calls.
12 minutes.
That's
the worst.
All right. So we're just gonna keep plowing through this then. Advertising guidance. I know a lot of these issues are just long overdue updates to statutory changes or rule changes.
Yeah. Keeping up with the AI.
Yeah.
That's all anybody's doing. I can put them on the screen and walk you through them without. Hey, sorry. So let me give you these from the top. Last time I tried to get into a mode that everybody could see, I broke it.
I think the first change is on page 14.
Okay, there you go. The first thing to pay attention to is right here, as you have said, this is on page 14 of 29. Reason for this is not hard to follow. AI has kind of entered our world like everybody's. The advertising committee has seen some consequences of AI use. It's not prohibited to use it. It's a tool, but it can be used well or not. And so we've added 3 specific things that are going to be problematic in terms of AI making advertising deceptive in uniquely AI ways. The first one is enhancement of product images. A product image has got to be a true image of the product. It can't be enhanced and super saturated to make the product look different than it actually looks on the shelf. I think of the poor real estate commission when I think of this, because you think all the real estate listings that are AI now. But it sounds like if you think you have
That's not what
problems.
my neighbor's house looks like.
Yes, exactly. But anyway, that seems simple, but we're asking people, please don't artificially enhance your images of the product. That misleads the consumer and it'll cause friction at the point of the
And
advertising.
that's just the product itself, right? Like, so if you're using Canva, for example, and you have a product image, you might use AI to remove the background or to blur a background or to make the background like white or something like that. You're only
Sure.
talking about the actual product.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
the bottom line is you can't mislead the consumer. Really,
Right.
to think of it's something it isn't.
Yep.
So if you apply that consistently to all the context, it pretty much solves itself. But yeah, I think if you're blurring a background or something, that's okay, as long as the consumer is getting a true and correct picture of what the product looks like in the real world.
So to me, that wording up there raises more questions than it solves. And, I spoke with Olga about this earlier. It's already a rule that you can't have an image, whether it's AI generated or not, that would be deceptive, false, misleading, or confuse the consumer. So like, it almost feels like that needs a little bit more there. It needs product image cannot be artificially enhanced in a way that would be deceptive, confusing, but that's already a rule, whether it's AI generated or hand drawn. I mean, so I just like, do we need that at all? Is that creating more, in my mind, that creates more confusion as to what an enhancement is versus what, to Julie's kind of question, like, is taking a product and putting it on an image of Mount Everest an enhancement, like, I just like, to me, the underlying rule is already there. It already covers AI around false, misleading, deceptive. So I'm fine if compliance or Patrick or whomever else feels like this actually helps. But I just, I'm not, for me, it's like, it's already in our rule.
Yeah.
Our rules apply to things whether they're AI or not.
Yes, and I mean the trouble is this like mental thing where it's like if AI does it, you think you're not accountable for it, kind of, because it like yes, you're totally right. Like we should not be having this conversation.
Right. Well, I've seen I've seen what's out there, and I recognize.
You're still accountable for
Yes.
it.
Yeah, it's sort of like, oh, that's what it did, Claude.
The other two I also think are covered, but probably do need to be called out just for the sheer number of ones that we're seeing. It's just like,
this was genuinely unique, and we had not anticipated this. We got and it's more like, but like this is one of those things where obviously it's not permitted. It's more like be aware when you're doing your advertising, you're putting it through this, because I'm not even sure the submitters recognize this.
I know.
But we're sitting in there, we got the thing up on the screen, and we're like, what number is that? That's not the poison control number that we're all bored with seeing.
Yeah.
And the system, whoever submitted this thing, had put it through, and it actually mashed up like generic health warnings from elsewhere into this weird amalgam of everybody's health warning. And it was insane. And of course, the rule says, whether it's a smart rule or not, it's a completely separate debate, but it says what letters and words to use.
Yeah.
And it was totally changed. And I don't think they did it on purpose. I think they didn't realize either. But before you submit this thing to us, please make sure your AI didn't manipulate the
You have to look closely.
warning. Make sure, because it does stuff like that without really, in some cases, a user will not realize that has occurred or didn't intend it. Similarly, we are seeing the AI modifications mash up other people's brands.
Yeah.
So if you're a retailer, like I carry these 4 cultivators, and these are their symbols. Their symbol can't be changing all the time. That's going to confuse people about branding. It intrudes upon the intellectual property rights of the brand. They're not likely to be happy. And again, it's not something people, I think, are using AI to accomplish on purpose. It's a collateral consequence they're not noticing.
Yeah.
And we need them to kind of pay attention. But then on one occasion, I think somebody said, well, what's the big deal? And the big deal is eventually the consumer is not going to have a stable idea of what that genuine brand looks like.
Well, that brand doesn't want that
Yeah,
confusion.
they're
I
not
would
going to
imagine
be.
they're not going to be very happy.
But then the consumer's not going to be happy either because you can't really tell a knockoff from a,
Yeah.
So it isn't that there's anything new under the sun here. It's
Right.
that something about having these so easily available and free to use is causing chaos.
So really your goal is to put people on notice with this. It's not, I mean,
This is like a public service announcement,
Yeah.
which I'm fine with including here.
Yes. It is not an unreasonable thing to say that this is gratuitous. We just don't want to add it. That's okay. Eventually, if I'm left to my own devices, it'll be 120 pages. But no, they won't. I'm just saying that for Silverman. But no, this is more an awareness thing. I think it could be the judgment of the board. It's not necessary. I think it's perfectly defensible judgment. I just think some awareness to this problem.
Right.
yeah, I think that's fine. Like you, I just wanted to make sure we didn't create more questions than we were answering. And I do agree with Pepper's language change that it needs to tie back to the goal.
Yeah, I think it's fine. I mean, yeah. It's yes. Yeah, it's just general awareness that AI is, maybe just one more kind of red flag for people that if you just submit an AI ad, there's probably something going to be wrong with it.
The warning thing was really nobody.
Yeah, you got to look closely.
But again, my feelings will not be hurt if you want to.
Let's move on. I think we're good here. I think our timing is a little tight.
Yes.
We want to get through.
Yeah, okay.
Olga's not going to let us go forever.
I
She
think
won't let
this
me
is
learn.
it, an update. This is occasioned by a statutory update, as you know, effective in the summer of 24. The prize award inducement prohibition was repealed from adult use advertising restrictions. It existed in the law. It wasn't something you guys invented, and it was removed. So you can have spin a wheel prizes and that kind of thing. All this section is doing is reminding people, one, as of that date, you can actually do this now. And two, important to notice, you can't do it in medical. In medical, there should be very little advertising in the first place, but the General Assembly did not remove the verbatim same exemption from that area. Finally, an issue, you could feel the same way about this one that you do about AI. Why are we talking about this in our advertising guidance? It's coming up for us because we've seen it in advertising. Right. And again, you're not the primary enforcers of this, and you don't want to be, but it's more one of those things where we want to make people aware of the general law of commerce in Vermont because it causes confusion. Raffles and lotteries by for-profit private companies are much more restricted than people think. And the reason for that is there's a huge carve out for nonprofits and fundraising. And so obviously you think, well, what, the Lions Club can do it and the Kiwanis can do it. This is accepted. People do this all the time. They can, a business can't. So all this does is point people to the relevant statute. We didn't write that statute. We don't enforce that statute as the primary enforcer of it. But one thing you don't want to do if you're accidentally having an illegal lottery is take out a whole page advertisement in the paper telling the people that do enforce it that you're doing the thing. So another awareness thing. And I think, again, here, is a defensible opinion to say this is beyond the scope of our advertising regulation. It's here for awareness.
And I think it's important for people to understand the difference between a raffle and a lottery and the spin the wheel and prizes, because they might conflate the two in their mind, right? Like, I get these postcards all the time where I can show up at the dealership and scratch something off and maybe I've won a free car, right? That's not a lottery or raffle. That's the, merchandise purchase offer or whatever. That's something different.
Mm-hmm. It depends how you set it up and whether the thing you definitely don't want to do is take cash to enter people into a thing.
Right.
The in exchange for purchase
there's a difference.
Confusing. We're basically stopping at just be aware of the statutory text and, apply. Be aware of it if you're going to do that kind of thing. Read it yourself, talk to your own lawyer. Mm-hmm. We're not real enthusiastic about being the beat cops on this one, but it's something that so few people are aware of. Like I was surprised by how rigid it is because it is like you see
it's
it
meant to
everywhere.
benefit
all the time. So that's all. If you're a business, be careful of raffles and lotteries. It's not the same rules as for the Kiwanis. Yep. I believe that is the end of the there is some reordering here, simply because the heading names were confusing. We say up here for publications and broadcasts, and then lower down, go on to other topics that are broader than that.
Is that new, the age
The
restriction?
age-restricted events section reflects part of the settlement, the Park Rec settlement. One of the things that was agreed to there was that if you've got an 18+ event, it's going to be the problem where you're presumptively out of skew to the general population of Vermont should be eliminated in most cases, but you've taken out the whole cohort under 18. So the thinking was, we can just simplify this by saying you're probably fine if you've got an 18+. The only exception is if it's, for example, an event for undergraduate college students, where there's a rational reason to think you're packing it with 18 to 21s, then the demographics could be, a showing of demographics could be applied. But in most cases, an 18+ event that doesn't have that characteristic can go through without data.
Is there a matrix that you use to determine whether or not something's going to skew younger towards 18 versus?
Only whether it's 18+. So if you show up and you persuasively say this is going to be cordoned off and only people over 18 are going to get in, we can at that point presume, because you've taken out the 0 to 18s or the 0 to 17s, that the populations.
I think it still is case by case. We had to deny, I think it was a drag show event because of the place where it was. And the idea was that a lot of teenagers would be part of that because it was sort of targeting families, for example, right? It was 18+, but it was targeting a specific category. I can't remember whether it was.
So like an event within an event.
Exactly.
Okay.
So I think, and we've had very, very few of those so far. So I think as we collect those requests, we'll be able to develop sort of precedent setting. But again, we are building very few so far.
You've got a section here that talks about, just adds a note that says effectively one way you can make the required showing if you're buying a digital advertising campaign is to show that you have tuned the, kind of selection metrics to hit people that are over 21. The team may ask for evidence that actually is working. It isn't always enough to say, well, we tried. They might want to know it worked, but people, because that's how advertising is bought in the real world, should be aware that the team can accept evidence of that kind of targeting as a solution to the demographic problem. Websites and social media, again, as part of the settlement, there was a lot of talk about how can we make these things more efficient or come up with common sense solutions. One was that if you could pin a comment or a post. There's a little bit of a difference between pinning a comment and pinning a post. And the important thing is that whatever, and the platforms vary in terms of, if you do that, how does the platform perform in regard to somebody's personal feed or something? This is saying really the important thing is that it works. The important, we don't really, the important thing is that whatever means you use, it's going to guarantee that somebody who sees the ad sees the warning. As long as that's the case, you're in the clear. If it's not the case, just saying, well, I pinned it and it doesn't appear in anybody's feed or something is not going to make it a compliant advertisement. So another way of saying it's got to work, if that makes sense. But these are the platforms are so diverse and they're kind of constantly changing how they work exactly that it's hard to.
The general rule that we repeated ad nauseum throughout the negotiations of the settlement were, if you see an ad, cannabis ad, you're virtually certain to also see the warning label. And I think what I've noticed is that people are getting creative on making sure that you're not seeing the warning label when you see an ad, as in, you have your advertisement or you have your warning label on the homepage of your website, but then you have a link in a social media post that directs you to a specific page that never redirects you past that homepage. So I think the general principle that we're trying to capture with this is that general principle that I said, if you're seeing a cannabis ad, you're virtually certain to see the health warning. I don't know if this is overreach or not. I think it kind of says exactly what I just said. But I think that this is one that just because of the sensitivity of this and there was a lawsuit and everything else, that it might be worth putting this out for comment for 30 days. Because I think we're going to get comments regardless, and it's better if we kind of hear them up front.
Yeah, there's no urgency to any of this, I don't think. It's sort of, these are just little necessaries that have accumulated over the
In
last.
practice, a lot of these things are already happening, right? This is really just.
Yeah, this is
putting
truing you up to
yes.
things that are happening in the real world.
Right. Yes.
But I, it never hurts to get.
Yeah, so you could take comments for a month or two on this. It's not an urgent matter. At the same time, I don't think we can make every amendment process.
Right. Yeah.
Like a rulemaking process.
Right. Well, that's why I almost feel like this isn't really even for the board to decide at all. I think, to me, what we decided was you need the team, internal team, the advertising review team needs any tool that they can to do the principle that we've espoused, which is if you're looking at an ad, you have to be virtually certain to see the warning somewhere. And again, we're trying to work on making the warning a little bit more effective and shorter and everything else. But that's just the law is like, so, to me, this is just basically just trying to get to that principle, giving the team some guidance on how to get to that principle. But I agree that these shouldn't turn into little mini rulemaking sessions with notice and comment periods and all the rest of it. But on this one, I think we're just a stitch in time. We'll save 9 if we just put it out for a comment for a little bit.
Do you want to do the same thing with the PR guidance?
We did it.
We did that.
We did it for 30 days.
Yeah, but you voted to accept the changes.
Yes.
So you want to make a motion to accept this effective the next board meeting? I think that's what we did with the PR guidance.
Okay, treat it like the PR guidance.
Yeah, and then collect comments between now and then revisit the comments, sort of process all of the comments that we receive, bring it to you.
So it would be a similar
Exactly.
motion, defer action for a month. Give people an
Exactly.
opportunity to write in.
But make it effective. Or you want more time. I just wasn't sure if we want to stay consistent with the process. Or
Sure.
Yeah,
I mean, to some degree, this is meant to be the staff's interpretation of what the rules that we've set. But again, like then you run into trouble, like the social media changes all the time. How do we interpret that? And when it changes again, will it be in line with what was agreed in the lawsuit? So I don't know. Whatever you want. I don't know what the right answer is.
It keeps changing, but the final one to call to your attention is what you see here. Really simply a reminder that age gating has got to work, just like the advertising warning has got to work. There are some cases where the site that isn't made carefully can have sub pages that don't do the thing. And again, the test is whether it actually works.
Yes, and we're not the only ones who are looking at this, right? That we had someone present to us the research they did on this. It's not just compliance that's looking at this stuff, so it's important.
Right. That concludes the amendments, I think. Oh, this is stylistic.
Yep.
Sure.
Thank you for making these changes. I know a lot of it is also just memorializing to the guidance what has changed statutorily or through the settlement. So I think it's in good shape. I just feel like we probably should just want to get a little bit of time for notice and input in case people don't agree that these are non-substantive changes. So Olga, do you want the motion? Do you want to vote on this?
I think it would be nice just so we are clear.
I think it's a motion. Do you know?
I will in a minute. I move to defer action on amendments to the advertising guidance until our regular meeting in August.
And I second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Olga, thank you for sitting through that.
Oh, yes, for sure.
For those who don't know, Olga's got a broken foot and she's a trooper for coming in for this.
Right. I am.
Yes.
All right. Well, let me get
Oh,
sorry. Yeah.
Do you need power?
No, I'm good. You should. All right, so here we go. Let's see. So first, a quick refresher on our recent education and outreach initiatives. In May, we had a retail security best practices. And in July, our compliance team held a session focused on pesticide best practices. Again, anyone who did not get a chance to attend these seminars but would like to could access them via our YouTube channel. And also a quick PSA, we will be pausing our Insight seminars for a couple of months and we'll resume them in October. So please stay tuned for information on those in our future newsletters. Now moving on to the licensing data. Familiar slide showing active licensee counts over the last 2 years. 440 active licenses as of now. 6 fewer than in the months prior. Again, we're continuing to monitor the trends for any anomalies, but are seeing same attrition month over month so far. Moving on. Now our active licenses broken up by type across the most recent quarter. Green is our July numbers. Again, we are, as usual, we are showing no changes in retail, propagator, or lab categories. Also, no changes in wholesaler. The changes this month, as we've seen before, impact cultivators and manufacturing, with a drop of 4 cultivator licenses and 2 manufacturing licenses months over months. Moving on, familiar pie chart. No changes in percent allocations months over months when it comes to the priority status. Now, on to the cultivator license data broken down by type and tier, again, 3 months. And green is the color for July. So again, months over months, changes are concentrated among tier 1s and tier 2s. So in July, total of 4 cultivators exited the market and 2 cultivators also went up a tier. So you know, I will note that those 2 tier 1 cultivators who went up were the first 2 businesses who graduated into the higher tier after receiving board's approval to expand their operations based on the information they submitted. And so again, while this slide, if you look closer, reflects a net decrease of 6 tier 1 cultivators, 2 of those did not leave the market. They simply moved into tier 2, which is reflected here. And a reminder on this topic is it was during our April board meeting that the board voted to open the window for cultivators to apply for tier graduation under Rule 1.3.4. And that window is still open and it will be open until September 1. So anybody who wants to can still consider applying. All right, moving on. 3 months of manufacturing licensing data. So we had 63 tier 2 manufacturing, which is a drop of 2. It included 3 relinquishments and also a gain on a new manufacturer. And I know that one of the manufacturers is actively working with our licensing to be reinstated. So we may see that happening soon too. No changes in numbers in tier 1 and tier 3. Next is our canopy capacity and utilization rate. So again, a square footage, capacity square footage information. Not much months over months here. Year over year, we are down about 133,000 square feet. But again, months over months, the numbers are very much almost identical. And now we'll look into canopy utilization rate. Last month, we took a deeper dive into canopy capacity and utilization. You may remember we broke the data down by indoor, outdoor, mixed cultivation, and cultivation tier. So anyone who missed those slides is welcome to review that presentation and refer back to that data. But for this month, the numbers remained, as I mentioned, very stable. So this is just a high-level overview. You could see indoor cultivation. That also includes the indoor portion of mixed cultivation, continues to have a bit lower utilization rate than outdoor at about 35%, and outdoor is at about 50%. But again, month over month, pretty steady.
Great, thank you.
And a quick look at the relinquishments. Again, you could see that we are reporting, if you look at the third column from the left, that we have 3 standard, 1 social equity, and 3 economic empowerment licensees that cease their operations. And then the other chart sort of summarizes who they are, cultivators and manufacturers, as I mentioned before. And now we'll look at the responses from the licensees who terminated their operations as to their reasoning. It's very, their motivated factors staying relatively consistent with market access challenges and profitability usually lead the way, but those are familiar responses. So that's what I got for the licensing portion. Now we'll switch into compliance and enforcement set of slides. Lots of work here this month. So in July, our team conducted 78 scheduled and unannounced inspections. In addition, they also conducted 8 targeted investigative visits. On average, this comes down to about 13 visits per field agent. So a ton of great work and a very busy month in just the field work. So thank you, team, for all of that. Moving on, we'll look at the inspection trends over the last 3 months. Just breaking down those 73 inspections. And as you could see in green, our cultivators saw the majority of visits, which reflects the seasonality of the field work in many ways. So that's the slide on inspections. And another slide on investigative visits here. Again, July data is in green. And as you can see, the investigative focus for the month of July was primarily on our retail establishments. All right, so that's this. So now moving on to the actual investigations. So the compliance team initiated 28 new investigations in the last month, which is the highest number of investigations opened in a single month to date. So you could look closer on the types of investigations broken down also by license type, where each color represents a different license category. So, for example, yellow is for our manufacturers and red is for retailers. I actually wanted to take a little time here with that slide because it's a lot here. So one important note that a single licensee may have multiple investigations opened against them. Right. So as a result, these 28 investigations do not necessarily represent 28 different licensees. And in addition, our compliance team may open investigations involving employee ID card holders, and those may not be connected to investigations involving a licensed establishment that they work for or used to work for. So again, it may seem scarier than it is, but so in this case, we had 3 separate employee ID card investigations started, as you could see in gray. So again, at a glance, you could probably see that our cultivators accounted for the largest share of new investigations with 10. And again, it could have been 10 separate businesses or fewer. I also wanted to flag one new category of complaints and investigations that we are capturing, which is internal audit. You could see it here, number 4, to provide some color. So this new category, it's not new, but we're pointing it out, captures issues identified by our staff through its own regulatory oversight rather than through any external complaints. So this typically would be violations uncovered during licensing inspections or during renewals or other routine compliance or licensing activities. So examples would be inspection violations, any banking, insurance that were identified by our licensing team and referred to the compliance. Things like that now fall into this category. So again, we're trying to kind of streamline and keep things a little cleaner moving forward in those categories. So that's what we have for this slide. Have any questions? No,
that's good. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so quick look at the additional enforcement actions. And you could see again, green color is our July data, a lot of complaints this month, 34. And then additionally, 5 letters of warning, a notice of violation, 5 product destructions, and 4 cessations of operations. Now, next, and I'll take a little time with this slide as well, because we received a lot of complaints in July, so you could see them here. As you could see here, and probably, yeah, let's see. We have received pesticide and business operations related complaint as the 2 most common categories. So I wanted to highlight that the pesticide related detections are at their highest level, and Mike can vouch for that. We had a discussion about that, and the most likely explanation is that many cultivators are now entering their 3rd or 4th year of operation. And unlike many traditional agricultural operations, cannabis cultivators generally do not have the benefit of crop rotation, which means pest pressures tend to increase over time as cultivation sites mature. And in contrast, cultivators in their 1st or 2nd year often experience fewer pest issues because their growing environments are still relatively new and pests have not yet become well established. But this also provides a good opportunity to highlight our recent CCB Insights educational session led by Chris Modica, who brings extensive expertise and experience in cultivation best practices. That presentation that she led focused specifically on practical strategies for integrated pest management and maintaining compliance with Vermont pesticide requirements. And we encourage our cultivators to take advantage of this educational resources as a way to help prevent compliance issues before they arise. So that's a little bit of a plug on this. And so in terms of the business operations violations, just to give a quick example of what those include, those would be related to employee complaints of mistreatments by their supervisors, age verification complaints, alleged embezzlement or theft, retailers accepting paper IDs, potential violations of one license rule or affiliations, or payment disputes between licensees. So again, you can see we got 12 of those this month, which is quite a few as well. So that's what I got for you here.
Did you say non-payment to cultivators? Yeah.
Those would be captured here. Yeah, yes, we got those. Yeah. All right, moving on. Just a quick look here. Letters of warning. We issued 5 total, and the majority were related to fell into the internal audit category. And in this instance, they were all related to the lapse of insurance issues. And we have 1 notice of violation. Okay, so that's what I got on compliance. We'll move into medical program data next. Just a couple usual slides. Year over year, our caregiver count is up from 123 to 148. And we also gained 37 new patients in the last 30 days. So the trend continues. And just a quick look at the endorsed retailers. We now have a total of 36 retail stores with approved medical endorsements, and a complete list of those can be found on our website. But that's a quick glance. Okay.
It's a nice distribution there. Like,
know.
you can almost see the highway, right? Like,
Oh, that's true. Yes,
the way we move through Vermont.
All right, that's good. I also have, I wanted to share with you the latest data on our product registration. We haven't had that shared with this group in a while. And our data team led by Alex pulled numbers together, making this reporting possible. And actually want to take a moment to recognize Alex's leadership and commitment to ensuring that the product registration process runs smoothly, efficiently, and with consistently high level of professionalism. I know that through Mike and his peers that Alex does his work with exceptional competence, responsiveness, and a strong focus on continuous improvement. He is always focused on providing folks with greater clarity, on improving our guidance documents, and making the registration process as straightforward as possible for licensees, while maintaining the integrity of our entire program. So thank you, Alex, if you're watching. We really appreciate you. All right, now we'll look at the actual data slides that Alex shared with us. So here, a lot of data, a lot of small numbers. So I'll try to highlight as best I can. So this slide highlights our product registration activity over the first 6 months in relation to, so the first 6 months of 2024, 25, and also 26. So that's that first table. You see 6 months of data there. And then the bottom set of charts represent sort of 2024 to date data. So the key takeaway is that so far in the year of 2026, we have registered just over 3,000 unique products, which is 425 more than during the same period in 2025. So we are on pace to exceed 6,000 product registrations for the end of the year. So the numbers continue to grow. You can also see in the charts that flower, of course, is our most commonly registered product, consistently year over year, and the numbers remain almost identical between 2025 and 2026 in registrations. Very, very close there. I think it was 1,268 flower registrations in the first 6 months of 25 and 1,277 so far in the 6 months of 2026. Vape cartridges and concentrates continue to show growing interest from the market as well. We saw that trend emerge in 2025 and it continues. So you could see that in those charts. The brown color represents 2026 data. So the table and chart below now has even further detail, including monthly registration activity over the past 2.5 years. So on average, now CCB team led by Alex processes just over 500 new product registrations each month, or roughly 17 unique products every day if you include calendar all days. So just for the ease of it. So it's a lot more. So again, a significant workload for our product team. And that being said, in terms of processing timelines, which are at the top right corner, our product registration requests are currently processed in just 13 days on average, which is actually an improvement from about 15 days that we had reported last year, even though the numbers went up, numbers of product registrations submitted. And then when our applicants submit complete and accurate documentation on the first attempt, the average processing time is under 10 days. So again, numbers clearly reflect our team's efficiency and continuous commitment to providing timely service while maintaining a thorough review process. So again, slides will be available later for anybody who wants to take extra time with them. And now I'll share one more slide, another very busy slide, but this one provides a closer look at product sales over the past 3 months. So that has an additional layer here. You could see that broken down by county and also by product category. Before sort of diving into the data, I need to share a disclaimer that our total sales figures do not match identically numbers reported by the Department of Taxes. We had an internal discussion on that, and we think there are a few reasons for that, potentially. So first, our reporting captured here also captures medical cannabis sales, which are not subject to cannabis excise tax and therefore are not reflected in the Department of Taxes numbers. So that's one reason. And additionally, some differences may be due to reporting timing or some unknown underreporting issues that may be happening. So again, but even with those limitations, that this data set should provide a reliable snapshot of market activity across the most recent 3 months, April through June of 2026. And so again, if you look at the very top, this slide summarizes total sales over the course of 3 months, units sold, and the average price per unit. It's a simple math. And then the color-coded charts below provide a more detailed breakdown of sales by county based on the product category. So in the charts, you could see that the flower, so the chart to your left, flower, which is in this deep purple color, continues to dominate sales across every county. The chart to the right offers a county-by-county view of product sales by category, making it easier to compare how consumer purchasing patterns vary across the different regions of the state. Again, got to look closely there, lots of colors. A lot of information. And again, anybody who is interested in digging in is welcome to find it on our website, I think by tomorrow. So that's what I got for the product registration and products.
Would it be possible to get this quarterly, do you think?
I think we could, yeah, we should be.
I mean, the price per unit, I think, is something that we really want to watch.
Yeah, we are working towards, we're getting closer and closer in the quality of our data. So yes. And on that, I actually have a couple more slides here. So I wanted to share a few data points that our tech team with Liz and Alex pulled together to help support the board's work on the retail siting. So I have a couple slides that provide a snapshot of where retail access currently exists across the state and how it relates to the population and where retail sales are occurring. So hopefully this will be helpful context as the board considers a path forward for retail siting framework. All right, so this slide provides an overview of Vermont's retail cannabis opt-in landscape and the corresponding population data. So our team compiled information on towns that have opted in into retail cannabis sales and further distinguished them between those that currently have one or more operating retailers and those that have opted in but do not currently record any retail sales, meaning they do not have an operating store at this time. So if you look at the map of our beautiful state, red represents towns that did not opt in, dark green represents towns with recorded sales, and light green represents towns that have opted in but have not recorded any sales, right? So very, very visually helpful map. Then if you look at the table to the right, it provides a county-by-county breakdown, including the total number of retailers, the total number of towns in each county, the number of towns that have opted in, and both the total county population and the population residing in the towns that have opted in. Those figures are based on the 2025 data and it's cited below. And then at the top of the slide is the statewide summary, those little pie charts. And the main takeaway there is that while about 31% of Vermont's town have opted in into retail cannabis sales, those communities represent about 54 of state's population. To put it another way, approximately 45 of Vermonters currently live in towns that have not opted into retail cannabis sales. But should it really hopefully gain something out of those charts? Okay, again, that's the first slide here. And then one more here, that is a sort of sales related. So this is additional data, again, based on the June numbers. So it's just the month of June. The two maps you're looking at here focus on retail sales. So the map to the left displays total retail sales by town. The color scale highlights the relative sales volume across the state, with red representing towns with the lowest recording sales, progressing through the shades of orange and yellow, and green indicating the towns with the highest sales. So to help guide you through it, as expected, Burlington recorded the highest sales during this month. Hartford and Rutland also stand out as our strong retail markets. And again, you could kind of see which towns fall where based on that scale. And the map on the right represents the same data, but on the county level. So again, not surprisingly, Chittenden and Windsor lead the state in total sales, retail sales. Then additionally, the table on the right provides county level information where you could also look at the average sales per retail store. So it breaks things down a little bit further on average. And we're including this table since looking at the average sales per store can help normalize the data across counties with different numbers of retailers and can be another perspective on retail market performance. Again, the hope here is that those data points can support the board's work on retail siting and help us get to that rulemaking faster. And all credit goes to the amazing team of Alex and Liz to pull that together for you guys.
This is great. And it is incredibly helpful to look at it from this perspective. Very much appreciated.
Thank you. And thank you, team. All right. So that is all we got for data. Is Pepper coming back?
Yes.
Shortly? Okay. Because we're ready to move.
It's just
into...
me. Wow.
I know. I feel like might be a little hard for you to manage. But yes, next is our staff recommendations for licensure. We are ready for you.
Okay. I saw Kyle in the attendance, virtual attendance.
Oh, so maybe.
I don't know if he's back.
Okay. Well,
Kyle, if you are back and you want to join for the staff recommendations on licensure, feel free to do that if you can. But otherwise, we'll keep going.
All right. Lots of slides here, as always. Lots of great work by our licensing team to manage that. So thank you, Melissa and team. All right. First, our staff recommendation for initial licensure, just one new application here from a manufacturer. They're new to the market. It's their first license, and our licensing division recommends approval.
Great. Is there a motion?
I move to approve the issuance of a new manufacturing license to Moonlaser.
I will second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Next, I have 3 slides representing timely, regular annual renewals. So we'll start with slide number 1. Moving on, that's our second slide. One more. And our licensing staff recommends approval for all of the licensees listed on this and the previous 2 slides.
All right. Is there a motion to approve?
I move to approve the renewal applications of the establishments listed in the preceding 3 slides as recommended by the licensing division.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have a business seeking to renew their retail license and also add a medical endorsement. The licensing team recommends approval here. And as a reminder, our Rule 3.4.3b requires enhanced training for patient-facing staff. And this establishment has already met this requirement as 2 of its employees have successfully completed the most recent medical program bartender training course.
Great. All right. Is there a motion to approve with the medical use?
I move to approve the application of Ninigo & Co. to renew its license with the addition of a medical use endorsement.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. So here we have 2 cultivators, 2 Tier 1 cultivators who are looking to change their cultivation license type from Tier 1 mixed into Tier 1 indoor. The sites of physical operations for both will remain the same, and the indoor-only licenses better match the establishment's current and intended operations. And our licensing team recommends approval.
Is there a motion to approve these changes?
I move that we approve the renewal applications of Island Pond Cannabis Company and Orleans Cannabis Company, including tier changes those cultivators have requested.
I second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So here is a slide with license renewal request with proposed ownership changes. We have provided the board with details reflecting the various requested changes. Our licensing team has received all supporting documentation and recommends approval of the timely renewals for all 4, along with the approval for change in ownership equities.
Is there a motion?
I move that the board approve the 4 renewal applications listed, which include amendments to the approved principals and controllers.
I second. All in favor? Aye.
Thank you. Okay. So here we are looking at the licensee who wants to renew their license along with requesting an approval for a location change. This mixed Tier 2 cultivator wishes to change its location from Waterbury to Colchester as a part of their regular on-time renewal. The site in Colchester is owned by the licensee, while the Waterbury site was leased and the lease is ending. The new site has received a passing inspection from our compliance team, and the issuance of the renewed license will be contingent upon updated insurance for the new location. Colchester does not have an LCC, and again, our team recommends that the renewal be approved.
Is there a motion to approve?
I move that the board approve the renewal application of Bernice Davis LLC, I hope I got that right, DBA The Hashstead, including amendment of its approved cultivation site from Waterbury to Colchester.
I second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Next is a request for issuance of a license with an amended location. Lovely Cannabis LLC operated a retail establishment in Brandon. At its regular meeting of January 28th of this year, the board approved the relocation in principle based on a finding that it would not complicate concentration issues. Now the business has had a passing site visit by compliance and has met all administrative requirements. As a result, the licensing team recommends that the board approve the amended license for issuance.
Any questions?
No.
Is there a motion to approve?
I move that the board approve final issuance of the operating license for Lovely Cannabis, DBA The Greenhouse.
And I second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So now we have a request to add a principal or controller pursuant to Rule 1.17. Here, Royal Bud LLC asks to add a new principal who will hold 25% equity. The new principal has completed affiliations check with no concerns raised. Background checks were also completed without any concerns, and the licensing team recommends approval of this ownership change for this business.
Is there a motion to approve the change?
I move that the board approve the ownership change for Royal Bud.
A second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Next is we have an establishment seeking to amend their retail license mid-cycle to add a medical endorsement. This retail business originally applied for a medical use endorsement at their renewal in January, but they were not eligible at the time. They have since had 6 months of compliant operation and are now eligible. The team recommends approval. Again, Rule 3.4.3b requires enhanced training for patient-facing staff, and this training requirement will still need to be met by this licensee before service to medical patients can begin, should the endorsement request be approved by the board.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve?
I move that the board grant the medical use endorsement to the Hidden Grove.
A second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Right. Thank you. And one final slide here for you. So here we have 9 now complete renewal applications, but the late but now complete for the board to review. Explanatory narratives and timelines for each have been shared with the board ahead of the meeting. 6 out of the 9 were not late on their 2025 renewal. 4 of the 9 submitted their renewal applications past their renewal deadline. And it also happens to be 3rd consecutive late renewal for 2 of these 9 renewing businesses. The licensing team would like to remind licensees that it is critical to submit renewal applications with sufficient time before the renewal deadline. Doing so helps avoid delays caused by missing or incomplete information and provides time to address any issues before a license is at a risk of expiration. And this month, 4 businesses missed the renewal deadline entirely, and several others submitted their applications only a few days before the deadline, leaving little opportunity to resolve outstanding issues. So we truly appreciate everyone's cooperation in planning ahead and submitting applications early to help avoid last-minute complications and unnecessary administrative burdens for both licensees and our agency. And now back to this slide. The licensing division has a favorable recommendation at this point, but of course it is up to the board whether to take and approve renewal applications and whether to make any referrals to compliance.
Okay. And yeah, I would like to add to that because what our license community probably doesn't know is that licensing sends us a complete history of all of the attempts to reach out and all of the times that they've tried to get, a licensee to get complete on time, all of the emails, phone calls, reminders that were given. And so we see that all as a timeline for each one of these late renewals. So I really appreciate the work that licensing does to try to avoid these issues. And it's been a change, and I know we know it's complicated, but when it's the 3rd time, they've added all these steps to make sure that that licensing has added to make sure that people are actually being reached out to in every medium possible. It gets a little frustrating for the board. And that's why we went with the 3 strikes rule. I know we just changed it, modified it, I should say, a little bit. But I do think that possibly because it was in place and, like everyone had notice, that maybe we do refer the 2 that are on their 3rd to compliance.
So just the 2 that are on their 3rd, but not others that were repeats? Was it only those 2 that were repeat? There
were repeats, but there were 2 that this is the 3rd time. Yeah. There were a few for whom it was the 2nd time.
I've got the names. Do we need to say them?
I think I can just say the repeated, the ones that have been
3rd.
late for the 3rd
Or
time.
you could just say repeated, and the team can look into those who are 2nd or 3rd, because might as well start looking.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Do you feel that,
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
All right. Is there a motion then?
I move that the board accept and approve the late renewal applications listed, and further that we refer repeated late submitters to compliance for evaluation.
A second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. that was all that I had for you.
That was great. Thank you. Incredible work all around. Compliance, obviously, our workload continues to increase, and obviously our staffing has not kept pace with that, despite our efforts in the legislature to do so. Really, thank you for all that great work. I know how much goes into even just a basic investigation. It's done really professionally. Licensing, there's just so many, like a basic on-time renewal is challenging enough, and then the chasing down the folks that are incomplete. It's just a lot of effort, and of course, all of the new slides on products and prices. The operations team, great work. I don't have anything else. That's the end of our agenda. Sorry, again, another long meeting, but it's 4:20. Might as well adjourn now.
Perfect.
All right. Thank you.